Mommy, can you hear me? Are you there? Yes, I'm sorry, daughter. You know that when I'm after work, I can easily fall out of the conversation. Holly tried to keep her voice calm. Dennis and my son and I will come to you for the holidays. Or do you have other plans? You tell me right away, and I'll quickly change mine. I don't know about Dad's plans, Holly exhaled. All I know is that they're beautiful. He left me, found a beautiful young woman, and announced it almost honestly. They've been serious for a long time. So we're officially divorced. I'm sorry to break the news on New Year's Eve. You know I'm not good at hiding things from you. Mommy, I'm coming to see you. I'm going to wait for Dennis to get home from work. Take a cab and come over. It's been so long since we've had a late-night chat. Jane, I'm fine. You don't have to leave a 1-year-old baby at night because of me. It's not going to make me feel any better. Mom, that baby has a dad who's an adequate, responsible, modern father. You can fool anyone with your voice, but not me. In an hour and a half, I'm sure you'll be expecting me. Holly listened to 3 quick beeps in the receiver and tried to smile helplessly. She was lucky to have a daughter. Not everyone was so lucky. Holly learned about the difficulties of the transition age only from other people's stories. She was friends with little Jane and continued to be friends with the almost grown-up Jane. She also managed to avoid worrying about her daughter's first love dramas. There were no dramas. Jane took her studies seriously. In the 2nd year, she found a job and managed to combine one thing with another. And by the end of the institute, saved up for a vacation to long-desired Italy. Of course, her parents added a little. And it happened. As in the song, quite by accident, we took tickets to the neighboring seat at a high altitude. The daughter met her future husband on the airplane. Venice, Florence, Rome. 6 months of meetings upon returning home, followed by a wedding and the birth of a child. Holly delighted in the role of caring grandmother and seemed to herself almost perfectly happy. She had always felt so comfortable and at ease in the family of Jane and Dennis. In the midst of their warm love and beautiful, almost wordless understanding of each other. It's good that my daughter is not repeating my fate, she thought gratefully one day on the subway coming back from her son-in-law's daughter's house, and she was startled at her own thoughts. What could she be dissatisfied with? She and Ben have an absolutely normal life for a couple with a long history. They do not scandalize, do not even argue on matters of principle, live peacefully. Ben earns good money and knows how to manage money wisely. She is, in general, lucky with her husband. Except for that eternal feeling of the last few years that something important is missing. In the very real love that any woman expects to meet, she had not been particularly lucky since her youth. She just accepted it calmly. After all, to be honest, there are plenty of women like her around, far more than those lucky enough to be truly loved, not for a honeymoon but for life. And until noon yesterday, Holly thought her married life was a success. She put all her heart and soul into her family and didn't consider it a sacrifice at all. She herself is pleased to take care of her husband, to arrange a cozy home where both want to rush from work. Their apartment is neither bigger nor cozier in layout than that of friends and good acquaintances, but on holidays everyone likes to gather at their place. She always has everything so well arranged. Ben's buddies often showed a joking envy. He seriously took taking care of himself for granted. Could it be any other way? If it could be, it wasn't for him. For the last couple of years, Ben had been busy building and finishing a country house, devoting all his spare time to it. He wanted not just a house, but a full-fledged, comfortable dwelling, where you can live all year round if you want. Holly had no time to go and look at the construction site every week, and at first she was very worried about it, but Ben waved it off. Come on, you want to be everywhere. It's better for everyone if you're in charge here, and I'm in charge there. Holly realized, or she thought she realized, that he really needed something of his own, where he was the boss. Yesterday morning she had suddenly felt sick, weak at work, and her head ached so badly that the usual pill didn't help at all. Apparently she did not look well at all, because even the chief, who was called indifferent, looked at her and said, "Holly, sometimes it's better to stay home for a couple days than to take 2 weeks sick leave. Go home and get some rest. You'll be back at work the day after tomorrow. It won't affect your paycheck. I don't want a lot of exhausted employees. I'm not a despot, as some people claim." Holly nodded gratefully and went home. How wrong we sometimes are in our judgments about people, especially if they are superiors who are generally disliked. Holly quietly, trying not to make any noise, entered the apartment. Ben arrived at night after a business trip. His sleep should not be disturbed, but Ben was awake. From the living room, a conversation was heard. Judging by the absence of the interlocutor's voice, Ben was talking on the phone. Holly did not immediately even realize that it was her husband speaking. The voice and intonation was as if it wasn't his. "My sweet sunshine, I'm coming over today. My old lady is pickling tomatoes after work today, according to a new recipe. The recipes are new every year, but my wife is old. I'm sorry I'm talking nonsense just to be witty. Honestly, I'll get my act together soon and tell you. I appreciate you and I'm happy you don't want to spend New Year's Eve without me. I'll decide before New Year's, I promise. I swear, my little girl. Don't be a child, understand my situation. It's not easy for me. It's more than 25 years of my life. We raised our daughter together. 5 more years and she'll look old, but she's all about family. The pantry's already bursting. She wants everything to be up to par. If I leave, she'll be all alone. There'll be no one to take care of her. I don't really care. I don't want to spend the rest of my life hanging out with men just to get away from my boring wife. I need joy in my life, and my joy is you. Holly hesitated for some reason to turn on the light in the hallway. It was enough light from the entryway, hitting the mirror, to see this woman gray, exhausted. That's what she is, no one's rival. And her husband pities her, too. Old, pathetic. If she didn't have such a headache, she would run out into the street, just to wander somewhere, until evening, or until she gets herself under control and regains her ability to think clearly. No, she wouldn't even have the strength to go down the stairs. She wanted to shut the door quietly, out of a ridiculous desire to listen to the conversation, but her husband heard the sound. He said goodbye and went out into the hallway. I decided not to make tomatoes if you basically don't care. Her strength was only enough for this ultimatum. Maybe it's for the best that you heard everything. I really hate lying to you. I should have ended it anyway. You're a good person, and I'm sorry to you. But there's no point in continuing it. Holly nonchalantly affirmed. It's nice that at least you recognize your old lady as a human being. Holly, but why the poison? Let's be honest. I'm only 53. I'm not ready to be a grandfather. I have a need for love. And why should I give it up? We raised our daughter, and we haven't had much of a connection since. You just refuse to see it, clinging to this meaningless semblance of a marriage that's like everyone else's. If you're willing to look and live like an old lady, that's your right and your choice. Take care of your granddaughter. You have someone to take care of. I would have lived like that too, like a lot of people my age. But I was lucky enough to be loved by a young, beautiful woman, and I loved her very much. Not everyone is so lucky. It's a new life, a real life. You can't give that up. It's a gift. You see, it's only now that I'm realizing how miserable I've been. This is my chance to start over. You won't be disadvantaged in any way. You're the mother of my daughter. I'm keeping this apartment for you. I won't take anything from here except my clothes and shoes. I'll live in the house with her. It's not for nothing that I've invested so much in this place. Apparently, fate has guided you don't drive a car and you haven't invested any money in it. So it's logical that it stays with me. They'll give you some money for the first time. We'll discuss the amount. It's called a kickback, Holly commented. What if I ask for too much? I said, we'll talk about it. Ben repeated patiently. You're so in love and so sensible. You've thought about everything for a long time, but you lack determination. And so everything is on top. Strategist. Holly, let's be human. In case you haven't noticed, I didn't bark at you doggy style. I don't need to have this conversation at all. I came home with a headache, and in situations like this, I lie in a warm bath. It helps. While I'm in the bath, get your stuff, your papers. What else you got? Thoughtfully, so you don't have to come back here for something you forgot. And leave the keys and file for divorce yourself. I don't like to go to court. You know I won't drag this out to spite you. Set a date, I'll come at the appointed day and hour, and we'll get divorced. No money. I've got a decent salary for me alone. Just don't show up. The day of the divorce is the last time I'll ever see you. And if you want to play the noble, give your share of the apartment to Jane, so that your lovers don't disinherit the girl. You have to admit, it's only fair. Mom, were you thinking about my inheritance at that moment? Quietly amazed Jane, listening to her story. Who should I be thinking about, daughter? Holly shrugged. A sad grin crept across her pale face. When such things come, you have to grasp at straws that will keep you from losing interest in life. I'm lucky to have you and Dennis. I promise not to torture you too much, not to turn into the annoying old woman your father thinks I am. I've been sitting here thinking. He's right about something. I always made sure he was well-fed, warmly clothed, rested comfortably, was surrounded by comfort. It was like a home service. I thought it was the right thing to do in a family. I didn't realize that's not what he needed. I should have thought more about myself, tried to be charming, and things might have turned out differently. Although there's no point in talking about it now. You're justifying him, then? Jane asked. To be honest, you surprise me with this habit of always blaming yourself. It's too much. I didn't tell you, but I'll tell you now. My father and I had a conversation about 3 years ago after New Year's Eve when he gave you a blender for New Year's Eve. A good blender. It still works now, nodded her daughter. But it's not a gift, it's just a thing to buy when you need it. I suddenly remembered that for every holiday your father gives you something practical and useful, everyday things. That's what I told him. He was so surprised, as if it was the first time he heard that you can give perfume and jewelry or theater tickets. Some kind of spa visit. Something that would emphasize that he thinks of you as a woman, wants to see you beautiful and satisfied. But my dad didn't hear me, even took offense at me, saying that I hadn't gotten rid of my naive dreams yet. I didn't think much of it at the time. Well, I tried, but it didn't work. And now it comes to mind. And he himself was comfortable that you're so, on the care of yourself, almost no money to spend. Who needs a beautiful, well-groomed wife? He'll take care of it himself. And whoever just wants a comfortable wife, that's how he behaves. I wish Daddy would spend all his earnings on his incomparable beauty. You even cheered me up, Holly smiled confusedly. I didn't realize I had you like that. I just love you very much, and I feel bad for you. You certainly don't deserve this. All of Dennis' friends are jealous that he has such a mother-in-law. They joke that you're the reason he married me. Dad's just used to luxury care, taken it for granted all his life. He'll definitely regret it. You'll see. I don't want him to regret anything. Let him go in peace. Thank you, Jane. My kitten. Don't fight with Daddy. You're a grown-up, diplomatic man. You realize he's still your father, right? Our divorce is our divorce, but it has nothing to do with you. Besides, he's vowed to take care of your inheritance before the divorce. So I'm sure I won't change my mind and start dragging things out. Don't worry, Mommy, I won't refuse, Jane assured him with a smile, looking at her mother's palm. Just so that some monster doesn't get it. And I admire your self-control. I never realized you were so strong. Holly's tears suddenly sprang from her eyes as if an invisible dam had burst. Daughter, I don't understand myself. I wanted to scream, to beg, something like, don't leave me. Let's try to fix everything. I'll forgive everything. Forget everything. Take everything into account. Only if you stay. But something kept me back. It was a shame to cry in front of him. You're the one I trust, and I'm crying in front of you. And I'm not ashamed. Too many drunks. Not good. Not likely to show up here much. Me neither. Listen, Holly, when this dance is over, let's go and sit somewhere cozy and talk. I'd like that, shall we? Holly really wanted to get out of here. And the guy seemed serious and nice. And she'd never been asked out before, except by her girlfriends. By the end of the evening, Holly had learned a few things about the guy. He's a young specialist in railroad production, an engineer. He has his own apartment, inherited from his grandfather, but he dreams of building his own house. He's the only son of his parents, from a full family. He doesn't like discos very much either. They play pop music, but he listens to heavy rock. I don't know why he decided to see what his ex-girlfriend was doing in those places. Yeah, it's definitely an ex-girlfriend. It was a stupid idea, but at least he met her. The girl didn't think there was any interest in meeting her. She just sits there and listens to his story, saying almost nothing herself. But it seemed Ben just needed to speak up. He walked Holly home and managed to earn his mom's approval. She liked that the guy wasn't being cryptic. He waited for his mother to open the door and handed Holly to her hand in hand. Well-mannered, and not like these modern informals or hooligans. The next day, a friend, Svetlana, ran in and told her that she had seen her in the company of a new acquaintance. It turned out that Ben was just using her for a performance. He was ostentatiously courting her in front of her ex-girlfriend, Helga. She couldn't shake off her sadness for 2 whole days. On the 3rd night, there was a short ring at the door. It was Mom who opened it. She was expecting a girlfriend, but on the doorstep stood Ben with a small bouquet and a cake. From that evening, they began dating. Holly quickly fell in love with him, angry at herself for it, and tried not to think about why he really wanted her, especially since her mom comforted her, telling her not to believe the gossip. Holly listened to her mother in silence, objecting only to herself so as not to upset her. Ben, and there was nothing to compare yet. They were just meeting as friends. It was enough for her that this guy was in her life. That's how it lasted until the summer, until his birthday. It was warm days and nights, celebrating the holiday at the guy's house. There were only his parents and Ben's friend and his wife, who had just returned from a wedding trip down south. For Holly, it was a day of getting to know Ben's parents. Her mother thought it was a good sign that he was serious, and had even spent half her paycheck on a cocktail dress for her daughter. Although for the countryside it was quite possible to get by with something simpler. Holly said so to her mother. Mom was amazed to learn that her not too confident daughter, it turns out, is not afraid of the upcoming acquaintance. Holly's boldness was explained simply she did not believe that all this would last long. One day Ben would disappear as quickly as he had appeared. If he doesn't return to Helga, he'll meet a new love. He's too handsome and promising for her, and he probably realizes it himself. That's what the girlfriends hinted. That's what the girl herself thought. Of course, deep down she still wanted to believe that it was not them, but her mother who was right. Such a happy evening like that had never happened in her life before. She behaved as usual, just happy about Ben's holiday and her parents' love for her. Both her father and mother and her friend Roman liked her, with absolutely no effort at all. Never before had she felt such ease. The closer the day leaned toward evening, the more her confidence grew that this day was made for something special. Her parents had gone into town for the night, promising to stop by her mom's house. The newlyweds had discreetly secluded themselves in the attic that had been prepared for them, and Ben and Holly were left alone by the brazier with its almost transparent corners. Ben seemed delighted to be joined with them. He placed a bottle of expensive champagne, given to him for his birthday by his boss, on the table. All that night they spent together, and in the morning Ben, having seen his friends off, drove Holly home himself. He pulled up in front of the store, jumped out of the car, and returned 5 minutes later with a bouquet of burgundy roses. "Did you ask her to marry him?" "No, Mom, he didn't. But it was really nice. Just don't swear, or at least not today." "She will." Mom promised confidently. "I can see that, and I'm not in the mood to fight today or tomorrow." "Do you think your mother is a prude?" They hugged each other and laughed quietly, relieved. There was no tomorrow to look forward to. In the evening, the family of the guy in full formed on the doorstep of his and his mother's apartment. His father, putting delicacies on the table, announced that they were old-fashioned people, so they decided to ask for the girl's hand in a domestic setting. But the wedding will be already in a restaurant, and according to all the canons. Then, in the early 90s, many girls still dreamed of a chic, large and solemn wedding. But Holly was not one of them. She wanted the kind of wedding that her daughter Jane had a quarter of a century later. Light, small and elegant for those closest to her, but with a honeymoon trip that would be remembered for a lifetime. But no one had asked her opinion about her own wedding, and she hadn't even noticed. She was sitting at the table, discussing something with her mom and future mother-in-law, and couldn't believe that all this was happening to her. Her beloved Ben wants to see her as his wife. She will make sure he will never regret it. Ben hasn't felt as happy as he does now in a long time, as his divorce from his indifferent, aging wife went off like clockwork. Things had worked out much easier than he had imagined for himself. Holly had done without scandals, threats, and tantrums, even without tears. Maybe she'd been living with him out of inertia for a long time, too. That would absolve him of some of the guilt of abandoning his wife. And yet, it seemed hurtful, acutely hurt his ego. He considered himself the center of the world, and she was letting him go for nothing. He feared that the family had saved an unpleasant surprise for the day of the divorce, but everything was as mundane as a visit to the therapist. Spouses who have no minor children and property claims are divorced without a court. Ex-wife kept her word. Given on the day of his departure no claims, if the interests of the daughter will be respected. She came to the divorce indifferent and some kind of refreshed. She looked at Ben without reproach, as at a neighbor in a cramped subway car as soon as possible to get out and make room. When they left the building, already divorced, she said goodbye indifferently and walked away, not looking like a lost and unhappy person from behind. Ben had a stupid feeling that he had not had a good time getting to know his ex-wife. Wow, now ex-wife. I wonder how long she'd been practicing that independent look. His friends called him a fool when they found out he was making a drastic change in his life. Some directly and harshly, some diplomatically. The point didn't change. He didn't even take offense because he felt right. Some of them are driven by jealousy. It's enough to show a photo of his sweetheart to ignite that envy. Someone just never had such a feeling, does not understand or has forgotten for what a man all the achievements and victories. He was like that himself. He thought it was normal to return home to his wife to grow old together imperceptibly. They just all live in hibernation, and he suddenly woke up. Dad was right in his day. Ben has never once regretted marrying Holly over the years. He had only started dating her to show Helga that he too could be looked at with the kind of adoration he looked at her with. Ben's value in her eyes didn't increase at all. But he suddenly realized that he wasn't really upset that his attitude toward Helga had long ago grown into some kind of bad habit and had let go of the obsession of the last 2 years. He was grateful to Holly for that. In her company, he felt so cozy and confident that it was very difficult, and even unnecessary, to give up this pleasant feeling. Holly did not demand anything from him, just enjoyed his company. The parents noticed the change in their son. It was impossible not to notice. He stopped being nervous and snapping for nothing, did not disappear at night, organized the regime and remembered about the interest in work and career. Even the expression on his face was different. For 2 years they had been worried about what good could come out of their son's stupid love for a girl of easy behavior, who only wanted to sell herself more expensive. Now they were silently rejoicing, afraid to jinx the unclear prospects with questions, and were also grateful to the unknown girl. Of course, my mother did her best and made some inquiries. Ben usually avoided discussing his personal life with his father. They were too different, and his father never liked his previous choices categorically. But after his 27th birthday, when he introduced Holly to his family, he had approached, "We need to talk." The father tried to be persuasive. A little girl at almost 25. Wow, in this day and age. And no worse than that ex of yours. Mother and I noticed the way she looks at you. You'll always know you're welcome home and cared for. In time, you'll appreciate that. If I were you, I'd marry her right away. You won't regret it. You'll remember my words with gratitude when I'm gone. And there'll be no escaping the whoremongers. You'll have enough for your lifetime, if you wish. And Ben got married. Dad and Mom are gone. It is unlikely that he would have been able to realize his life-changing twist if they were alive, or would have had to hide his divorce from Holly for the rest of his life. His own or his parents, they would never have understood or accepted. They loved her like their own daughter. And most surprisingly, she loved them sincerely too. Sometimes he missed his parents, but now he was relieved that his new love would not have to face the undeserved dislike of his relatives. Since there were no relatives except Jane, her daughter didn't want to meet her. She's only a few years older than you. You must have something in common. Dad, if I had to live in the same apartment with your girlfriend, I'd look for something in common with her, so I wouldn't complicate my life with negativity. I don't see the need. Sorry, we may never cross paths in our lives. I'm guessing your woman would be fine with that too. I've already agreed not to hurt your feelings or say mean things to you. And this is quite difficult for me now, and don't complicate my life even more, please. Ben understood the daughter had always been closer to her mother than to him, so there was nothing to be surprised about. But Diane was upset because she refused to meet him. I'm not even upset with myself, I'm upset with you. Your daughter does not want to make even the slightest effort to understand the feelings of her father, who did everything for her and continues to do. It's so natural to accept a gift of a share in an apartment, but to do something nice for her father is an impossible task. She was so genuinely upset that Ben had to console her for a long time, and the next day to please her with a visit to a country restaurant. She is so life-loving, so fond of pleasure, so happy at every surprise and gift, so giving her love after a day full of entertainment, that any of his sorrows pale in comparison with this happiness. Happiness is, now remembered suddenly a precise phrase read somewhere. The first 2 months of a free life. Holly struggled with her old way of life, tried to reshape it. At first she latched onto the simplest thing. Guys, why don't I come down every weekend and spend the whole day walking around and doing zines? And you two can be alone together. But the guys rejected the offer. They wanted to raise their daughter on their own. Don't be offended, we'd rather go somewhere as a family sometimes with you and Xena. The cultural program invented for her was very interesting but not happy. Holly felt like a wedding general or a dressed-up bear when her daughter or a friend brought her to the theater or to an exhibition with a new hairstyle and in new dresses. They try to entertain her, and she, unable to genuinely rejoice, walks around, red as jam. I'm ashamed of myself. Listen, it's like you're making titanic efforts on yourself. Shrewd Helly sparkled. Don't pretend for our sake. Think about what you really want for yourself. Holly confessed, and the girls convinced her to go on vacation, not to the cottage, where she was eager to help her mother Dennis grow, harvest and prepare crops, but to a real vacation. In April, Holly flew to Egypt. 10 days away from home, like on another planet. That's what she was really happy about. She did the math, she hadn't been to the sea in 12 years. She went every year with little Jane. And then Ben started building a house, and the house ate up almost all the finances. Jane had been going to the sea alone ever since, to children's and youth camps. Holly vacationed alone, avoiding noisy companies. And it didn't weigh her down in the slightest. Perhaps we should go on vacation every year. It is possible even in the off-season, and not for the beach, to walk through different old towns, through quaint markets, through narrow streets. She came back feeling completely refreshed, and immediately fell from ship to ball. It was good that there were still a few days of vacation left, while she was running around with her worldly upheavals. She completely forgot the matchmakers have a 30-year wedding anniversary. Pearl's wedding is the day after her return, and she didn't even bring a present. Just some oriental sweets and fruit teas. But the daughter who met her laughed. She knew it, and she had already bought everything from both of them. But the matchmakers celebrated the wedding at the campground. Of those invited, almost no one was surprised. Dennis's parents did not like flashy restaurants. They were natural people. Both of them were fond of fishing and long walks in beautiful places. Holly even exhaled deeply in relief when she recognized that the events did not require meticulously chosen dresses, heels, elaborate hair and makeup. She began to suddenly understand her friend Lena, who was growing weary of it all. Instead of a long morning gathering on the day of the anniversary, she properly slept, leisurely drank coffee and gladly dressed in loose beige pants and snow-white t-shirt from Egypt, on which 3 camels dancing on the background of the pyramids. The weather is unusually warm now for April. It doesn't happen often, but you have to throw on a tight windswept hair she just let loose over her shoulders. So be it. They say women over 40 shouldn't wear their hair long. Whoever made that up, let them not wear it. And she'd completely forgotten that her honey Karen eye was so tan herself in the mirror. Holly liked her. I don't remember exactly when it started. Probably on vacation. There, some heavy lump in her chest unnoticeably dissolved and she felt like she just liked living. Soon her children would pick her up, and her vacation would continue with a holiday at the matchmakers. Soon it would be New Year's Eve again. It seemed like just yesterday they were celebrating the previous one. It is necessary to think of gifts, to plan something interesting. But there was neither strength nor ideas. Ben was so exhausted for the last year, as he had never been tired, probably since his senior year, when he combined work with business trips and diploma. But when he'd been a kid, he'd had an easier time of it. Diane had noticed recently that he used to be a man of celebration, but now he was completely dull and boring, despite her best efforts. At the word effort, Ben even perked up because he was surprised. It seemed to him that all the efforts apply just him. Yes, and simply lives on everything ready, and he doesn't mind. But she must realize that for the eternal celebration of his strength is no longer enough. I'm not a showman. I'm the chief engineer of the project, Sonny, he joked. No, she has nothing to reproach him with. She's just too sensitive, and she's young. For her, it is important to have an eventful life, new impressions. She was counting on him to give her all that. Here I'm thinking about where to take Diane for New Year's Eve. Ben shared his thoughts with his old friend James, having stopped by his cottage for a cup of tea. I can't think of anything yet. We will fly to the Emirates in March. It has long been decided. I can't afford 2 trips in 3 months. There are some fundamental problems with the house. You've become wooden. I understand, of course, that active love makes you thin, but in your case, it's not that. You're busy, like a working housewife with 2 children, my friend said scathingly. As the owner, who didn't need to leave the house today, he'd had enough whiskey to make him want to be frank. Thanks for the support and advice, buddy, Ben said, hurt by the comparison. You're welcome. Who else will tell the truth but an old friend? Let's get back to specifics. How would you like to celebrate the new year yourself? I would have stayed at home, Ben grinned. We would invite you, Kat, and decorate the tree. We used to celebrate every year like that. What was bad? The lineup changes, James said. And we're already invited. We're not going to say no. I'm sorry. Listen, why don't you and your beauty meet at home together? I mean, you two shouldn't get bored of each other yet. Romantic areas, candles, pillows. We spent New Year's Eve at home last year because we didn't have time to book anything decent with the divorce. You know how messed up that was. And on a second gray New Year's Eve, Diane might take offense. Your problems are far from me, to be honest, James said. I don't know what to advise you. Look, what if you don't show originality and go to work? She'd be less bored and more appreciative of the pleasures of a simple vacation. Don't give me that look. I'm not suggesting that she should be hauling sleepers and sitting at the checkout and the supermarket, or even keep an eye on the sack conveyor belt. She's got some fine maiden profession. She had a life before you. She's not a schoolgirl after all. She worked in a flower boutique, I told you. I told you it was a fine profession. Give her a course for New Year's Eve to train to be a top-notch creative florist. That's what it's called, isn't it? After which she'll get a job at some cool place. I'm dead serious, by the way. Show you really care with a gift like this. It's become very difficult for friends to find common ground. Over the years, they have a lot less in common than they did when they were younger. I'll think about it, Ben said tiredly. He was not ready to distance himself from his old friend. After the meeting with James, he had planned to stop by his sick colleague's house to pick up some paperwork and discuss some things, but he suddenly decided to postpone the visit. He wanted to go home. Called, rescheduled. In the morning, I felt I'd done the right thing. I stopped by my favorite candy store and wine market. Tomorrow's Friday. What's stopping me from starting today? Driving home, he remembered that he'd forgotten to call Diane to tell her he'd be an hour and a half early. Oh, well, it would be a surprise. The light was on in the living room, but a quiet, melodious voice could be heard from the dark veranda. It was one of her funny habits to chat with her girlfriends in the evening on the phone on the open veranda, looking only at the chain of streetlights along the highway. In the summer, it was understandable. In winter, it didn't seem too comfortable, but she assured me it was fine, throwing on her fur coat. Not to listen to my serious lover are nonsense. Shrugged her shoulders. Ben a couple or 3 times still unobtrusively overheard. He wondered what she was talking about with others, not with him. It was really insignificant girl talk, nonsense. They advised each other manicures, swimming pool, bragged about gifts. The girl appeared very content with her life in these conversations. It pleased him, and he didn't listen to them anymore. Now she was chattering to light rhythmic music and therefore did not hear or see Ben drive up. The garage was on the other side of the house. He walked along the wall toward the veranda to the voice of the sounding brook until he began to discern individual words in himself. I think of him very often, right in the details. All the nicest things I imagine what would happen if I dared. And I realize he can't give me anything but that. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying, Yul. I really don't want to be a short-sighted fool who ruins everything for a nice little fling. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why I haven't decided to see him alone yet. And I probably never will. I just hope guys aren't chasing guys these days. Maybe he'll call one more time and then stop. I can't take that chance. You're right, kitten. I'm not that good at faking it. Mine may be a little old for me, but he's reliable. Yeah, he's asking me to marry him. I'll say yes. You don't throw those options away. He'll definitely do anything for me. Not like those guys who already split a restaurant bill. Thanks, Kitty, for listening to me. I kept you late. Yeah, and I'm freezing. I'm gonna go to my cabin. Bye, 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 kisses. The door slammed as the coffin board rattled overhead. The light footsteps of the jar hushed the hallway. Ben stood, touching his forehead to the icy wall of his house. When had it gotten so cold? It had been warm not so long ago. It's a good thing she's such a chattering fool. Otherwise he'd marry her and put her in his will. I don't doubt that's the right and manly thing to do. Jane will still get the apartment, and her husband is quite a well-to-do and prosperous family, and she has only him alone. Yes, the girl convinced him of this so discreetly that he was sure it was his own decision. So she's not the fool here. He had fallen into a well-known ancient trap like many before him, and he would not dare to enter his own house and throw her out like a mischievous cat. It was good for him to be with her. He was good with her. Even if it was self-deception. He should give her money, just to give her the money he had saved for a vacation with her in the Emirates. Isn't that a pity? She deserves it. It's just enough until she finds a job and goes back to her mom to live. She's got a place to live she won't go to waste. Or at least she'll be happy to have a spicy new romance out of wedlock. He'll call her a cab. Left alone, Ben reached for the bottle of expensive sparkling wine he had brought today. Well, let's celebrate. He had never believed in the law of the boomerang, considered it a consolation for losers. He believed that everyone gets only what they can get for themselves. The rest was mystical. No, it's not. That mysticism had a place in his real life. What did Holly feel then, listening to his phone conversation? Only a year had passed and he'd gotten his boomerang light and fast. Fate had spared him yet. He hadn't had time to marry and dump a lot of money into her welfare, and Holly had lived with him for a quarter of a century. And his fatigue was always gone. When he came home, he had all the things that make up the warm prosperity that many only dream of reaching for. He got, without the slightest effort, completely undeservedly, everything he had worked so hard to earn for the last year. His father was right. He had never regretted his choice, so reasonable, so convenient. Now there was no father, no mother, no friends. Only Holly's friends now. There was only one place left on earth he could go now, if he was accepted there. He'd do anything to be accepted. No, not now, not in this sorry state. To think things over, to sleep, to work, to find the words. He'd honestly left the keys to their shared apartment in the mailbox the day he left, so he had to wait a couple hours for Holly to get home. Ben found a parking space around the corner of a nearby office center, left the car there, and went for a walk. And she herself didn't call him either, even wished him happy birthday by text. And he didn't even give it a second thought. Nothing will make up for it. Jane can't stay mad for long, can't play Snow Queen. She's a lot like her mom. Ben realized he was drinking his third cup of espresso at the mall coffee shop. Time to go check it out. Surely the wife must have gotten home by now. Indeed, there was a light on in the living room kitchen windows. Ben hesitantly hesitated in front of the intercom, but a couple of minutes later the door to the entryway opened, and out jumped a skinny old woman with a small dog and a brightly colored harness under her armpit, some subtly familiar figure from his neighbors. Ignoring the granny's condescendingly mocking glance, he entered the entryway unnoticed by himself, and found himself on his customary third floor at the light gray door, then rang the bell, which he fumbled for without looking. Holly opened almost at once. It seemed to him that at first she wanted to slam the door shut before he could get in, but then for some reason she changed her mind. She had recently returned from somewhere, probably from a party, because between her and the threshold stood a pair of dainty boots in a puddle of snow, which Ben hesitated to step over until she waved her head lightly. Come in. What happened? It was Holly, and yet completely not her at the same time. She had never been heavy-set, always just a woman of average height and build, but now she looked as light and casually graceful as a young girl. She had contrived to dye her hair a dark chocolate shade that went so well with the unusual warm color of her eyes and skin tone. And her hair was not gathered in a sleek, comfortable ponytail at the back of her head, but was loose over her shoulders in a sort of artistic mess, like in the paintings of Renaissance masters. She was wearing a simple, flowing burgundy knee-length dress with a frivolous neckline, emphasizing her slender waist. One could stare at her like fire for a long time. She'd gotten 10 years younger at least since he'd left her. Anyone would say now that the woman in front of him was a beautiful, attractive woman. That's what Ben said. "You've become very beautiful." "Wow." "Thank you," Holly replied, smiling politely, as if she had been told that every day her whole life. She paused briefly, waiting for him to say something else, but he remained silent. And then she continued softly, without irritation. "Listen, Ben, if there's any important business for me, tell me at once. I'm waiting for guests. You don't call, you don't warn me. And I have my own plans. I can't give you much time right now. I'm sorry. Could you forgive me?" He breathed out his question. "So I have long since forgiven you," she smiled with peaceful surprise. "You did not go for career in some secret society, which requires an official forgiveness of ex-wives, certified by a notary. You should only call your daughter more often. She may never admit it, but she misses you." "Really?" "Let's get to the point. What's your reason for coming here?" "I want you and our family back. I want to make things right. I was an idiot. I made a dead-end mistake, and I admit it outright. I hope I didn't realize it too late, because I haven't done anything legal. I understand that you haven't been expecting this for a long time in your feminine ego. I understand that you need to take a break. Think it over calmly and tell me when I can come over. I'm really sorry things didn't work out with your young friend. You were so enthusiastic I can't bear to call you a sneak or anything like that. And it doesn't make any sense now. I have someone I love. We're adults. After my stupid prank, you had a right to get revenge. You proved to me how wrong I was in a big way. Let's just agree not to relive any of these adventures. You misunderstood me, or rather, you didn't hear me. I didn't say I wanted to prove anything to you or to myself, much less to take revenge. You should have realized after all these years that I wouldn't do such nonsense, much less go looking for a passing fancy. The woman and her daughter, son-in-law, and granddaughter arrived early for the matchmaker's wedding. Dennis always left for a long journey in advance. He assured half seriously, half jokingly, that his girls would forget something and still have to go back. And then they would ask to stop 10 times to walk around and take photos in beautiful places. That's more or less how it was. But it didn't prevent the family from always arriving before the set time. Immediately, everyone went to assess the campground, chatting merrily. Zoe loved water of all kinds, shapes, and temperatures, and was already running quite well. So she had to be watched with both eyes and reacted to her ideas promptly. Zoe ran as maneuverably as bats fly, suddenly changing her trajectory. After her thoughtful vacation, Holly was a little weaned from the fast pace of life and let her guard down. In April, it was mostly roach, as far as she could remember from the stories of the matchmakers, and it seems to be caught from the shore. She didn't expect that a rubber boat would be hidden in the light between the bushes, and that her granddaughter would jump into it. Holly had a kind of stupor at any unexpected danger, and it was pointless to fight nature. And then a silent fisherman in boots materialized from somewhere. He entered the water and deftly, gently extracted the sim from the boat. She was not frightened or upset, just giggled and showed him her tongue. "Hello, take it please." The man with laughing eyes held out his granddaughter. "Thank you," Holly replied, dropping the days. And both laughed briefly, meeting each other's gazes. The fisherman had a neat short beard, highlighted by silver, hair and merry gray eyes. "Excuse us," Holly told him, and added, "For some reason we're here for a wedding anniversary. Only too early, so we get into all sorts of adventures. We're waiting for the others." "Everyone here is like that," Fisherman announced, "including me. I'm Andrew, a classmate of the Happy Jubilee. It's better to go straight to Andy." She introduced herself, too, and so they became a couple. From that day on, they sat next to each other at the table, talking about everything, dancing only with each other on the creaking wooden dancing terrace. No one paid any attention to it, as if it went without saying that they were a couple and everyone was used to it. It was so strange and funny, and it was like they really knew each other a long time ago. And there was no fear that they might say or do something wrong, ruin everything. Her son-in-law's mother, putting her granddaughter to bed, told her we were young almost every day to communicate, and then fate scattered us in different cities. He has lived far away for many years, and still every year he comes to us, then we to him. It's strange that you two haven't crossed paths until now. Yeah, well, we've never celebrated any anniversary this big. It was always just the two of us. I knew his wife well. Her name was Iron, too. 7 years ago, she died of a heart condition. They didn't tell anyone, but now I think that's why they didn't have children. They didn't want to risk it. Andrew was all alone, really alone. Random girlfriends are out of character for him. He needs someone to look after him. Of course, he's self-sufficient, and being alone hasn't changed him for the worse, but he's not happy about it. There's a reason we wanted to have a company wedding. Something was driving us. Looks like we're a Cupid family now. If someone had told me yesterday that I could be in this situation, I would have laughed incredulously, maybe even a little offended at being laughed at. The girl fell fast asleep, and they returned to their guests. The wedding was honored by the staunchest guests until morning. Long gone from the tables, people divided into interest groups and flocked under the shoreline canopies to bonfires or in the gazebo at the edge of the woods. Andrew walked Holly around the lake in the boat. She dozed in the pre-dawn mist. By noon, all the anniversary guests had departed, and the two of them stayed on the lake for a couple more days. Why does everyone think that roach is a bland, tasteless fish that is only good for dried fish? It was delicious, a delicacy. And then Andrew went to his place in Kaliningrad and called every day, and came for weekends twice a month. And she'd already gone to see him a few times. The last time was early December. Slow, lazy snow fell vertically along the cathedral walls. Holly had arrived wearing thin gloves, and Andrew had brought her soft woolen mittens from the market. Now, in this cold, he announced that the mittens would have to be removed for a little while. With careful tenderness, he put on her ring finger a ring with a ruby, which he had already hidden in his palm for a long time, and immediately put her hand back into the mitten. If you agree to marry me, it's an engagement ring, and if not, it's just a gift from the heart. Back home and meeting with her daughter, telling her news, Holly was shy and tried to appear a judicious lady, weighing the pros and cons. I've worked at this agency for so many years. It's all its own and all its own. I know from experience how long it takes women my age to find a job in my specialty. To employers, we're like pensioners. Not everyone understands the benefits. Mom, come on. Recruitment agencies like yours are not exclusive. How many times have you thought about changing jobs? Here's your chance. What about you two as a family? Holly was hesitant to make another argument that should have seemed compelling. You're used to me being the go-to guy, and if you need anything, I'm here. Argument. I'm sorry, Mom. It's not that you and your help aren't important. It's just that you know very well that we're not helpless enough to make my young, beautiful mom a full-time grandmother. As far as our benefit is concerned, we already have a pearl couple of grandparents here, but we don't have any in other very interesting cities, and that's a shame. A happy grandmother in Kaliningrad is her own active guide on vacation. There's so much to see when Zoe grows up a bit, Mom. And actually, that's not the point at all. Would you see yourself flying right now, not touching the ground, not pretending that you care about anything more than your love right now? It's not funny at all. It's completely normal, and we're all happy for you. Holly wrote a letter of resignation and worked out her 2 weeks. She tried to see her friends more often, at least for a little while, because soon they would have to see each other less often. Today after work, she ran through the stores, browsing through farewell New Year's gifts for her colleagues, and in the evening she waited for her friend to visit. She promised to bring a familiar master of wedding hairstyles, opposed to all kinds of glamour. The friend and now argued that you can go to the wedding even in overalls, but not to build a stylish romantic hairstyle of gorgeous long hair would be a crime. And that same night, the ex-husband showed up. I understand you were trying to escape your loneliness. Good for you. You've benefited from this incident. I mean, it's been good for both of us. You've blossomed. I've learned to appreciate what I have, not chase illusions. You know in your heart that it's not worth it to be adventurous at our age. We have too much in common. It won't be so hard for us to start over. By the way, I've almost finished the house. Just a few minor details. You'll like it. Maybe you could do some decorating tips, get involved. Well, we could live there and rent this place out. No more cramped quarters, there's views just a stone's throw away. Well, you probably remember. We'll go mushroom picking. You love mushrooms. In summer, we'll go to the sea on vacation, so no vegetable gardens. We can go together with young people or take our granddaughter, or just the two of us, to renew our feelings. It's all gone, honey. There's nothing to update, Holly said without a trace of gloating or irritation. I'm grateful to you for the good things we had, for our wonderful daughter. And for this incident, as you call it, too. Before this incident, I lived and did not even know what I could be, what a man could be with me, how happiness feels. I could have lived my whole life and never known it. You must really understand me. A year ago, you said something like that. I was wrong, you see. And you're not afraid of being wrong. I'm not, Holly smiled with quiet confidence. Ben's eyes glittered with the cold anger that had once robbed her of her will and strength, and she decided it was time to show him the door. She didn't feel like exchanging insults. They had absolutely no place in her current life. But Holly didn't have to do anything. She was saved by 4 short, cheerful rings at the door. She came in, and with her was a tall, thin girl in a cap with huge curls. Well, meet Alona, wedding fairy, stylist. And this is our bride. Oh, and this is her ex-husband, who came to privately congratulate and wish his ex-wife happiness in her new marriage. Very modern. Hello, Ben. The man grabbed his jacket off the rack and left the apartment without looking back. He didn't remember how he'd gotten outside, how he'd gotten home. Not far from home, he was stopped for speeding. My ex-wife left me, and I was on my way back to her. I thought she'd be happy. Forgive me. She's getting married in a year. So much for a woman's fidelity. She's a decent woman who had a home, a job, a granddaughter. What better person to talk to than anyone else? He had a desperate, sudden urge to speak out to someone he didn't know. The occasional hitchhiker effect, or whatever it's called. Could you breathe into a tube, please? At home, the man immediately called Jane, apologized for not calling for a long time, asked about his granddaughter, and when he could see them all. Maybe we can go together somewhere to the water park. Or what's your daughter's favorite? Dad, did something happen to you? My daughter asked right away. Yes, daughter. I need you to be my ally. There's no one else to talk your mom out of doing something stupid. Not so long ago, you were such a romantic, putting passion above all else. Her own daughter snickered with amusement. Ben told me all about Diane. Jan is a kind, impressionable girl who likes to pretend to be cynical sometimes, so that her kindness is not overused. She listened to her father attentively and seemed to really sympathize. Then Ben began to ask her to influence his mother. She is a clever woman, and a clever man learns from other people's mistakes. And didn't she want her mother and father to be together again? Daddy, she said softly, let's be honest. I'm a little past the age of teenage trauma that comes with parental divorce. Your marriage is over, isn't it? Well, you could have had someone else. I'm really sorry you got one. You're not the worst kind of woman to get a woman to notice you for more than a house and a paycheck. You're still pretty good. But if Mom agreed to come back to you now, that's what I'd call a mistake. That's when I'd talk her out of it. You lived with her because she was comfortable. She deserves to be loved, not just a comfortable, good wife. And now she has that, and I wish the same for you. I see. You get a share of the apartment. You don't need your father anymore. Right, little bitch? He dropped the call and disconnected the phone. He didn't want to get up in the morning. When you drink alone, for some reason the hangover is always harder than after the same dose of booze in a company gathered for a fun occasion. Probably the occasion also affects. Although smart doctors do not write about it anywhere. I wanted to send a message to the general that I was ill and needed 24 hours to recover. I remembered that today was a day off, fell asleep again, and slept for another 3 hours. After a contrast shower, I slowly began to regain consciousness and turned on my phone. I was used to being in responsible positions, that I always had to be in touch. Without communication, I felt disconnected from the world, afraid of missing something. He counted 13 unanswered calls, all to Diane. He must not have been too convincing when he kicked her out of his house. He just couldn't be rude to her. She's got some kind of special talent. Girls like that get away with anything, as long as there are fools like him in the world. Ben's thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. It's her again. I can't run away from her like a kid. Just don't hang up the phone, begged a confused, melodic voice. Just listen to me. It may be important for you too. Yeah, it's going to be hard for you to come up with something new to hook me. Trust is lost. Let's not waste time. Don't just use platitudes like I'm pregnant. Try them on your other partners. But I'm really pregnant. The girl sobbed desperately into the phone. And I haven't had any other partners, no one but you. Well, there were some fantasies, but I didn't fulfill them. Who hasn't? I wouldn't dare cheat on you, I know myself. I really didn't know about the baby when you kicked me out. I felt sick yesterday, nauseous. I took a test, and I found out. You can take a DNA test and make sure it's your baby. Stop for a minute. I'm trying to get Ben to cut in. Do you want to have the baby? Yes, I do. It's about time. And I really want to. Do you need financial support for the baby? I need a father. He needs his dad. But what's the play for? I'm not acting. I really want things to work out between us. I promise I'll never lie to you. And with a baby, I won't have to do anything stupid. Mom raised Diane alone, called her princess, dressed her like a doll. She was good at sewing, worked convenient hours, and took sewing orders home. From the age of 3, she gave the girl to dance, took her to different circles. Except for dancing and singing, she showed no interest in anything. She also studied without much zeal, but went favorite with most teachers and often received a grade higher only for the charm and ability to raise the mood of the teacher. Mom saw all this, understood, and not at all upset that the daughter will not come out of Sofia Kovalevskaya or Margaret Thatcher. She clearly has a different fate, and let it be happy. The girl grew up very pretty and artistic, with a lovely dotty figure. She could have become an actress with such external data, but this requires determination, which she did not possess. She was only interested in what came her way, and the prospect of making an effort for her goal caused bouts of ennui. Yes, well, if it's so hard, we can do without it. And the only things that came into her hands were boys. A charming blonde with a beautiful figure and delicately misty, sly blue eyes imperceptibly became the center of any company, pushing aside both wittier and brighter in character girls. Her mother was afraid that her daughter would repeat her fate, spin some silly romance, imagine it to be the love of her life, and be left alone with a child. She insinuated her princess heartfelt and patiently, yes, money and connections I have no, and you do not have special abilities, the desire to achieve something to achieve. Well, no and no, what can you do? But you are beautiful and sweet, with an easy character. Everybody likes you. That's a great opportunity, too. We can't all be independent and self-sufficient. You need only once to arrange your woman's fate correctly, wisely choosing a husband who will not be a burden to you and take care of you, so that you do not spend your life in endless work, as I do. There's certainly nothing beautiful about it. If algebra and English were given with difficulty, these suggestions of Mama's were understood with half a hint. Mom could have no fear. The daughter politely, sweetly, and even sympathetically blew off young men who could not offer a secure life. Some guys really liked, but the life of Mom and many women around her demonstrated the fact love is not for long, and then only struggle with life's problems together with someone or alone. She did not dream of conquering a real rich man, did not believe in such fairy tales. She was a very practical person. She would be satisfied with just a fairly well-to-do and firmly on his feet man, in respect of which you can be completely confident. She didn't go for casual flings so as not to spoil her reputation. It only seems like a big city, after all. By the age of 30, her experience consisted of only 2 lovers, both more or less exactly as she'd planned. In both cases, wives and underage children messed up the plans. Both wives were tenacious, unwilling to let their husbands go. They involved the whole family in the psychological treatment, blackmailed with children and division of property. OEA was losing. When she met Ben, she realized he was the one. He came to their flower boutique for an original bouquet for his boss's wife, to whom he was invited for her birthday. "This is not a corporate and personal holiday for loved ones," explained a polite man in a decent suit, so that she better understood what kind of bouquet was needed. She liked the visitor, she had her principles, and was squeamish about even promising options if the man didn't seem pleasant. Now she smiled and motioned that he would definitely come again. She'd been lucky, though. His daughter turned out to be grown and married, and his wife belonged to a type she didn't understand, but not a dangerous one. And now she was lucky again. It is only necessary to behave correctly, to finally grow up and submit to young fitness instructors and other entertainment seekers. A baby's not bad either. Now that's kids she really likes. James looked at his friend with his trademark wistfully ironic grin that people sometimes took offense to, but Ben didn't care right now. "What can I tell you?" James pondered aloud, leaning against the bar. "It's not the worst thing for you to do. The feeling of not being needed by anyone is probably much worse. Parents are gone. Ex-wife and daughter are happy without you. And then one day you're a young dad again. They say late fatherhood is the most realized." James raised his index finger admonishingly, then rubbed his forehead. "What if you have a son? You've always been jealous of me having 2 boys. You'll be the favorite authoritative dad, the big boss. I'm not encouraging you to live with his mom, although that's up to you. You can't just vaporize everything. I don't believe that. And you finding out what she's really like, that's not a bad thing. Anyway, I'm staying out of it." The friend went home in a cab, and the man decided to air his head a little from the brandy heaviness through the evening city. He was a little drunk after all, but not drunk enough to fall asleep anywhere. The bar where they were meeting was in the center, not far from the station square, quite aptly decorated for New Year's Eve. Ben was drawn there for some reason, stomping through the busy crowd. It looked as if some train had recently arrived. People with luggage were coming out into the square, chatting animatedly as they greeted them. And Holly. Suddenly his ex-wife came out wearing a dainty crimson coat, looking like a girl. She was gently held by the shoulders by a tall bearded man, and a lot of people were looking at them for some reason, though they were just walking along, talking and laughing quietly. Ben stopped under a streetlight, and they saw him. "Hi," Holly said quite nonchalantly. "Hi, heard about the wedding. Congratulations. I have a son on the way." "Wow, that's great." Her companion smiled broadly and openly. "Well, congratulations to you too." "Wow, thank you. Okay, I'm off to see the family." Ben waved his hand and quickly disappeared into the crowd. Who was this slightly inebriated knight of the sad image? Andrew asked, raising one eyebrow amusedly. "My ex-husband," Holly answered. "If he's not lying, I'm happy for him. But then I'm also happy for that simpleton. I owe him a lot, after all." Ben watched them get into the cab, talking and laughing, and when they were gone, he went to the station cab driver and gave him Diane's address. He walked down the long corridor of the maternity hospital for the second hour. Andrew brought his wife. She was very weak. Doctors did not advise her at first, and then seeing her persistence and forbade her to give birth. With her heart condition, it was tantamount to murder. But she convinced the doctors, "I feel everything will be fine. My intuition has never failed me." When her husband brought her to the hospital, the doctors asked just in case. "Andrew, anything can happen. You know your wife's health. That's why I'm asking you now. Who will we save if something goes wrong?" "Of course, Lexi. And you think she can't handle it?" A grown man asked in a frightened voice. "Andrew, with your wife's health, anything's possible, but we'll keep our fingers crossed." It was out of the question that Lexi would give birth on her own, so only a C-section. She was covered in sweat, her fine curls stuck to her forehead. She tried to say something, but she had no strength. She was breathing often, and you could tell from her lips that she was asking. Soon, her beautiful long fingers dug into the snow-white sheet. and she bit her lips so hard from the pain that blood dripped from them. She was injected with a heart medication into her vein. She began to breathe more evenly and said she felt better. She was given anesthesia and labor began. When the first girl was taken out, the instruments showed cardiac arrest. She became violently ill. A cardiologist was by her side who knew what medications she was tolerating and what needed to be administered to make the labor successful. Everything they could do was done. When the doctors realized they were losing her, they began to save the second girl. 2 tiny droplets, similar to each other, came into the world on Christmas Day. God gave them life, but took the life of their mom. The father was inconsolable. Life with his Lexi had been a blessing. Gentle, kind, she loved her husband and was devoted to him with all her aching heart. It was a model family. Shers took a nanny, a woman about 50 years old, who was with the children around the clock. They named the girls almost identically, Vivian and Vanessa. And since Vanessa was too long to pronounce, she was Vanessa at home. Nanny quickly learned to distinguish them because she knew a little secret. Vivian, the older by 5 minutes, had a small mole behind her right ear, and the younger Vanessa had the exact same one, but behind her left. She said this to Andrew, but he was even more confused. He tried to be homeless. There wasn't much Daddy could do for the girls yet, so he plunged headlong into work. He was obliged to provide his princesses with a trouble-free future. So the first thing he did was to buy a huge plot of land outside the city and start building a big house. He wanted it to be a family nest, for the girls to live here with their families. With this in mind, he built the house with 2 entrances. He decided that Vivian had a mole behind her right ear, so her entrance would be on the right, and Vanessa's would be on the left. Then everyone laughed at this idea, but when after 3 years, the mansion was built, everyone saw just a castle for princesses. The entrance consisted of 2 entrances. Above each of them were monograms in the form of the letters B and H. It was very unusual. When they entered these doors, there were 2 beautiful staircases on the right and left, leading to the second floor. Andrew tried to make everything in the house so that his girls would be comfortable. After the events described above, 17 years passed. The father did not dote on his girls. His life he never settled, did not find a woman who at least a little would be like his Lexi. His daughters grew up beautiful, and their father was worried about the increased attention from the male population, and he thought that they should be less at dubious events. So we talk about the characters of the girls, then better than a poet and cannot say. Ice and fire. The eldest Vivian was bold, mischievous, and adventurous. The vast world mesmerized and beckoned her to herself, which cannot be said about Vanessa. Vivian, once a gypsy woman, said that she was not created for family life, but created for festivity and splendor, that her life would be full of adventure and loss, to which she replied that she didn't believe in that nonsense. She was very beautiful. This beauty was so bright, even bold. Despite her still very young age, she had the alluring look of an experienced woman and seductive plump lips. She was not shy to charm and seduce. She never went unnoticed. When not seen by her father, she painted her already seductive lips with bright red lipstick. Combined with her black hair, it looked a little vulgar, but there wasn't a man who would take his eyes off her in a bored way. She saw it, knew it, and sort of teased him by saying, "Yes, I am so beautiful, but I'm not yours. I am not so easily obtained, and only your glance is very little to be with me." But for all that, she was an excellent student. She read a lot, and she had a tongue that even her father couldn't outtalk her. Vivian kept everyone in suspense. One day, the chauffeur who drove him to work came to her father and said that there was no car in the garage. There was no one else to take the car besides Vivian. When Vanessa heard the roar of an approaching motor, she jumped out of the house and ran up to the garage. They stared at each other, one completely unhappy with her sister's behavior and the other satisfied that she could get away with it. "So, where did you learn to drive?" Vanessa asked her, but Vivian laughed merrily that her joke had succeeded. From the outside, it was striking that, despite the difference in the expression of their beautiful faces and the apparent recklessness of her older sister, they were alike as 2 drops of water. Looking at each other, it was as if they were looking in a mirror. Vanessa's character was completely different. With the same facial features, the same plump lips, she was modest, quiet. Like her mom, she was domestic, the kind you dream of marrying. Smart, beautiful, modest, she had it in her blood to take care of her family and friends. Vanessa was content with her home, her family, and following their traditions. The sisters were always very close. The girls loved each other very much, and Vanessa was always getting her older sister out of yet another trouble. She always found a reason to justify Vivian and, without hesitation, took the blame. Their father often lectured them, teaching them to be serious and responsible, even when temptations were great. Everything about them was unusual, and sometimes it seemed to those around them that there was only one person in front of them. But deep in their hearts, they realized that there were many differences between them. The girls finished school, and then their roads diverged. Victoria wanted to enter economics, and Vanessa wanted to become a teacher. Why do you need this pedagogical school? Always these screaming children and miserable salaries you have to go where after studying you can get a good job, or even in the firm to my father, but teachers are definitely not needed there. Let's think about it. Dad's not forever. Who's going to take care of the business? Nay, I don't know anything about business. Why would I go into it? You don't have to know anything about business. You can go to law school and then go to your dad's firm and work in the law department. That's not helping the family business. At the family council, it was decided that Vanessa would go to university to study law and Vivian to study economics. So the girls went to the same institute, but to different faculties. As soon as Vivian appeared at the faculty, she immediately divided everyone into two camps. Outspoken enemies and the same outspoken admirers. In the first group, according to the law of the genre, was all female students, and in the second, almost all young people, except those who considered themselves not worthy to be next to such a beauty. But strangely enough, the teachers were also divided into two camps. Female teachers, and they were the majority, noted too brazen appearance, hyper-confidence, frank outfits, and very beautiful appearance. But to be fair, they also noted her sharp mind and wit. The first year of the economics faculty practically repeated school subjects, so Vivian did not bother with preparation.
She had straight A's in all seminars and credits. That increased the number of envious people and therefore enemies. She was not afraid of this. She clearly knew what she wanted and went to her goal.
In the second year, special subjects were added, and one of them was financial management. Entering the classroom, the teacher looked around the group. On the second row, his attention was attracted by a searing brunette who looked at him with interest. "Hello, my name is Denial. I will be reading your course, Financial Management. The course is designed for the whole year in the summer session. The exam. There are no books on the subject, so my lectures will be my main source of knowledge on the subject. That's all I have so far. If you have any questions, at the end of the class, I will answer them all." And he began the lecture. Vivian wrote something down, but mostly looked at the new teacher. He was a man of about 35. She noted that he was only about 17 years older than her, which was nothing, tall and handsome. He reminded her immediately of the actor Kevin Costner. The resemblance was uncanny. She looked at him without taking her eyes off, which was very embarrassing. He noticed a beautiful brunette. It was hard to take his eyes off her too, but he was more experienced than this girl and could control himself. He was clearly attracted to her. At the end of the lecture, Denial, as promised, asked for questions that he was willing to answer. Everyone remained silent, but Vivian decided to ask, "Tell me, has anyone ever told you that you look like the artist Kevin Costner?" Everyone laughed. "It's a little off topic, but I'll answer it so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Yes, it has been said, and more than once. I noticed some similarities myself, but they're very minor." "Yes, indeed," said Vivian. "You're much more interesting than he is." She finished without embarrassment. "Thank you for your kind words, but that's the end of the matter. If you are not interested in anything else, I'll say goodbye." She didn't write down the lecture, so she took the notes from Jacques, who was the one who had the most fun with her. He was outwardly a very interesting guy, but he was too small for her. He tried to please her. He was her slave, and what she needed, with her temperament, was a man. 6 months passed. In that time, Vivian had learned a great deal about her favorite man, and that he had become her favorite, she did not even doubt. He was not married in this place. She sighed with relief. He had a rented apartment. After the institute internship, he passed abroad and lived there for 2 years. She had enough of this information, the main thing of which was that he was free, and she launched an offensive, not thinking about the consequences. The sisters went to university by car. Vivian was driving. By this time, she had finished driving lessons and was very confident behind the wheel. It was obvious that she liked to drive, but as a person who was fond of driving, she had exceeded the speed limit more than once. But in some surprising way, without involving her father, she dealt with the situation on her own. The winter session was coming up, and Vivian was not nervous at all because there was no subject that would be difficult for her. She couldn't think of an excuse to be alone with Daniel. But one day, the thought occurred to her to slash his tires and offer her services, a ride home. She'd asked a local thug who always hung out around the corner for a smoke and a beer. Having paid a little and having shown the victim car, she calmly went to lectures. Coming out of the uni, she saw Denial, who was circling the car and lamenting about the 3 flat tires. "Ma," Vivian said in surprise. "Who did you hurt so badly?" "I was thinking the same thing. There were no credits, no exams. It was just someone who fell in love," Daniel said with a smile. You say it so confidently, as if it wasn't the first time." "No, it's the first time. I was going to offer you a ride home, but now I don't know. You'll think I did it on purpose to get you in the car." "That's exactly what I think, but I'll ask you to drive me home. But please wait. I'll call a tow truck." She was so embarrassed that he'd figured her out in a heartbeat. They rode in the car and were silent. "Where should I take you?" Vivian asked. He gave an address. As they drove up to his house, she didn't want to leave him. He felt it. He had the same desire. But Daniel knew it was wrong, that she was still a child and he shouldn't go along with his feelings. He was an experienced man. He'd had women. He knew his way around them, but in this case, he knew he had to stop. Vivian expected Daniel to say thank you and leave. So ahead of him, she asked, "What are you paying with? What do you need? I can offer you money." And he saw the nose wrinkle on her pretty face. "I can buy you a coffee. There's a nice cafe around the corner." She shook her head, showing that it wasn't that. "Then you talk to me, I'll do it." "Are you sure you'll do it?" And she, plucking up her courage, "Nah, kiss me." She did not take her eyes away, but looked straight at him. She had the tantalizing look of an experienced woman, her bright lips attracted like a magnet. He wanted it too, but the fruit was forbidden, and that fueled the passion even more, and he couldn't stand it. He pulled her to him, gently at first, just touching her face and lips, and began to cover her with kisses. He realized from her reaction that this was her first time. He knew how to bring a woman to ecstasy, and when he felt she was all his, they merged in a passionate kiss. She was dizzy with happiness. She didn't even realize it could be so pleasurable. When he wanted to let her go, she didn't let him, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck and pulling him against her. Vanessa loved going to law school. She thought she would regret her career as an educator. But no, she loved college life. Despite the fact that she was as beautiful as Vivian, she had friends and girlfriends, on the background of which her beauty was even more expressive. She was respected by teachers for her intelligence, poise, and excellent grades. Many boys liked her, but she herself was not in a hurry with relationships. Her favorite phrase, "all in due time." The second course brought a lot of new subjects, new difficulties, and a lot of new things. Vanessa sat at the textbooks to make sense of it all. And once she saw it, her father offered the help of his lawyer, who works at the firm. He will explain everything to you in simple, accessible language, and examples will be given. Don't say no. It's real help. Vanessa was happy for any help, so she agreed. Just before the session, a young man about 25 years old, wearing glasses, which suited him very well, came to them and introduced himself. "My name is Aaron. You could just call me Aaron. I work as a lawyer for your father, Andrew. I really want to help you pass the session on excellent, but now I doubt whether I will succeed. Your beauty distracts me, and even my thoughts get confused, but I'll get used to it. I'll get myself under control and will succeed." With these words, he sat down at the table, laid out his books, and said, "I'm ready. Ask me any questions." Vanessa took the tickets and, without wasting any time, started with the first one. They had been called for lunch 3 times already, but their preparation was going so well that they only came for dinner. Vanessa was very grateful to Aaron. She was confident in her knowledge and was not afraid of the exam. Aaron came a couple more times. There were still some questions, which, with his help, were quickly solved. The session began. Vanessa was prepared, but Aaron was worried about his ward, so he came to the university to support her. When she came out with the credit card, with the mark A, he wrapped her in his arms and congratulated her. Flowers appeared from somewhere, which raised the girl's mood even more. They went for a walk along the embankment. The weather was beautiful. They wanted to sing and shout with joy. Aaron invited her to a cafe. They drank a glass of champagne, drank coffee, ate ice cream, and Vanessa felt so tired that she asked Aaron to take her home. Said home, she collapsed into bed and didn't get up until lunchtime the next day. She hadn't seen Vivian in a while, so she went to her room to chat. Her sister was still asleep. She lay down next to her and Vivian woke up immediately. "Hi, sis." With such warmth and love, Vanessa said. "Hi, Vanessa. How are you doing? How's the session?" Vivian asked before she opened her eye. "I'm fine. I'm passing with flying colors so far. I wanted to tell you I think I'm in love. Sleep is gone." "Who is he? Where did you meet him?" My sister started asking with a vigor. "No. He's Aaron, my dad's lawyer. He's been helping me study for my exams. Yesterday, he came to cheer me on, and when I got an A, he gave me flowers and invited me to a... He's so gentle, so interesting, and I feel he likes me too." "What do you see in that boring guy?" "I think he's so boring. He's a drag." Vanessa stood up abruptly and left her sister's room. She's so abrupt, only her opinion is considered unquestionable. She never learned to consider others. If she likes something, take it out and put it down, and don't give a damn about others. So thought the offended Vanessa, wiping her tears. But Vivian was already running after Vanessa to apologize. She realized that she had overreacted. She'd gotten too personal and had to apologize to her sister. "Vanessa, honey, I'm sorry. I was wrong." "Well, you know me. You know me. The tongue is my enemy. I'm sorry. I love you very much." You couldn't hold a grudge against her for long. She was such a suck-up. She could find so much to say for herself that Vanessa couldn't help but forgive her. "I also want to tell you something important and very secret," and Vivian told her about Daniel, which made Vanessa speechless. "You're crazy. He's a teacher. How are you going to face him in lectures, credits, and exams? He's twice your age. He should be married by now, and you're still a child. Vivian, you've upset me. I'm going to worry about you now. What a grown man wants from a young girl, don't you know?" "I do," Vivian replied firmly. "I want that too. I love him and I'd do anything for him. And if you get pregnant, what are you going to do? This is very serious, sister. So end this relationship before it's too late. You're as boring as your Aaron. You don't realize that the heart doesn't understand orders. You stop loving him, that's all. You can't tell it to stop loving him. It loves and is ready for any sacrifice," Vivian explained to her sister. After the conversation, they went to their rooms. Vanessa thought about Aaron again, remembered every detail of their walk, and did not agree with Vivian that he was an uninteresting person. He seemed to her to be a well-read, cultured man. It was just that he and Vivian had different tastes. Vivian longed for a closer relationship with Daniel. She gave him a few more rides home while his car was being repaired, and each time she said goodbye, he paid her back with a kiss. Each time they became even more passionate and prolonged, which fueled the passion between the young people. But Daniel had a way of stepping on the throat of his own song, and that was the end of it. Vivian was angry with him, but she couldn't help it. He wouldn't invite her to his house, citing the mess of not having a woman's hand in it. It was the end of the second year, and the exam on financial management was coming up. Vivian was ready for it and was not worried at all. She heard whispers behind her back that Daniel was going to give her an A, but she ignored them. When she got the ticket, she didn't even prepare for it, but decided to answer at the board. She answered perfectly. Everyone who sat in the audience's mouths dropped open. For the sake of order, the teacher asked her a few questions, which she answered. Another adorned her report card. As she left the building, she decided to wait for Daniel, but she saw his car, which meant he wasn't going with her today. Maybe another flat tire. She felt funny that she couldn't think of anything more interesting to do. Getting into the car, she drove home. When Daniel's exam was over, he felt very tired, but after taking a breath of fresh air, he perked up. Noticing that there was no Vivian's car in the parking lot, he felt sad. He would have liked to see her, to praise her for her excellent knowledge. He realized he missed her. Without expecting himself, he decided, "Vivian, I wanted to compliment you on your excellent knowledge. I'm pleased that you love my subject." "I loved you first, and then the subject," Vivian answered. "You are my favorite student too." "I've never had one, probably won't have any more," said Daniel sadly. "It's like you're saying goodbye to me," Vivian asked. "Yes. I'm going abroad tomorrow. I won't be back until September." "So goodbye, Vivian." "What are you going to do abroad?" "My parents are there. They're not young anymore. I have to visit them." "I'm going to visit them. Can I come with you?" "I'll rent an apartment, and in my free time, we'll go for walks, and you'll show me the local beauty." "How do you like my idea? Am I good?" I don't think it's a good idea because I won't have time to go out with you. I'll be busy. Me. Where are you going? Nay, Spain. Really? We have a house in Spain. I won't even have to rent an apartment. I'll live at home. What city are you in? He didn't want to tell Vivian all this. Besides his parents, he had friends there and not just men. Nayla he had serious views on. She was a serious and very nice girl. He liked her. Daniel's mom wanted them to be together, so pretty Vivian would be an obvious choice. No, Vivian, I'm sorry, but no. I don't need to see you. I understand you have a woman you're going to see, and I'm in the way. Is that right? She waited fearfully for an answer. Yes, Vivian, you're right. And besides, you and I are not a couple at all. I'm much older than you. You still have a long way to go. Goodbye. Tears dripped from her eyes. She couldn't see anything and stopped to avoid an accident. I'm still going to Spain, and tomorrow too. I have my passport and tickets are no problem. Her mood immediately improved and she went home. When she went into her father's office, she said she was going to Spain tomorrow. She would have a vacation, swim in the sea. She passed on an excellent session and well-deserved a vacation. Andrew didn't mind. Vanessa didn't mind either. There was only one flight to Spain tomorrow, and the tickets were booked for it. Even from a distance, she saw Daniel, but she didn't want him to see her. Since they were business class passengers, they boarded without waiting in line. And they had a separate minibus that took them down the runway. And they got on the plane first, because Daniel was flying economy class, and they didn't meet. Once they were in the air, Vivian told her sister why there was such a rush. Told her that Daniel was on the plane, also going to Spain. She asked her sister to go to their house alone and she would come over later. She should see where Daniel was going. Vanessa disagreed for a long time, but there was no use arguing with Vivian. She ran after Daniel so she wouldn't lose sight of him. He was met by a girl. Small in stature, a little pudgy, pretty, but she's a long way from me, she thought arrogantly. Maybe it was a sister or an acquaintance. They walked to the bus and Vivian kept up. When they got off the bus, they immediately ducked into a cab. While she was looking for a car, they had already pulled away, but she told the cab driver which car to follow. It was getting dark, and when her car stopped, she saw that a completely different person had gotten out of the car they were following. The cab driver had mixed up the cars and followed the other one. Vivian looked around. Everything was unfamiliar. The cab driver was gone. What should she do? The neighborhood didn't look like a rich one. There were small houses all around, and she realized that she had to get out of here quickly. She went in the direction where the cab had gone. She wanted to ask how to get to the bus, but she didn't meet anyone. A group of young men and girls were walking towards her. She asked them how to get to the bus, but she didn't remember anything else. She woke up in some dirty shed. She had a headache and smelled terrible. It felt like there was a toilet nearby. When her eyes got used to the darkness, she realized she was in a shed with a hole in the roof and a toilet pit next to it. She wanted to get up, but her legs were tied with duct tape. She didn't have her phone, money, or purse with her. Her hands were stiff from the duct tape, so she tried to tear it with her teeth and free herself. When she freed her hands and started to untie her legs, at that moment a man entered the shed and explained in broken English that she should not hurry anywhere. They had her passport, phone, and money. Where did such a beautiful girl come from? I'm from Chicago. Let me go. No, we need a bird like that for ourselves. You'll work and give us the money, but if you run away, we'll catch you and ruin your pretty face. You'll get in trouble. You'll be in trouble. They're already looking for me and they'll find me. So you better let me go. I can give you money. I have a rich dad. If I call him, then he'll send it to me. Give me the phone and you'll be rich soon. No, pretty girl, you'll earn us more with your sweet spot than your daddy will pay us once. So wait for the owner to come and decide. She realized she was in deep shit. And for the first time in her life, she didn't know what to do, so she was scared. Not waiting for Vivian, by nightfall, she called Andrew. Daddy, something's happened to Vivian. I can feel it. Come quickly. I can't do it alone. Andrew left on a private flight with the security guys. They had worked in intergroups many times and had solved such complicated and intricate cases that Andrew had no doubt they would help. They'd figure it out faster because they knew what they were doing so well. Vanessa met her father in tears, all the time saying the same thing, that Vivian is in danger. Alleged she could feel it and she had to hurry. She was taken with her to show the place where they had parted with Vivian and where she had gone next. After examining the place and seeing the many video cameras, they drove to the Spanish police station. After examining the footage, they saw Vivian getting on a bus. They followed the route of that bus, then examined other video footage. There was a clear view of Vivian catching a cab. After discerning the license plate number, they quickly found a cab driver who remembered well where he had taken the beautiful girl yesterday. Half an hour later, they were there. The cab driver, looking around cautiously, said in broken English to look in the barns and the yards. And here the Spanish police refused to help, citing that the girl is an adult, came here on her own. No one forced her, and they will not attract people for who knows what. Andrew offered them money and a lot of it, but they left. The boys decided to act on their own. Shabby houses, no different from the barns in the yard, was a great number, but not so that they could not be examined. It was nearing the end of the day, and the search yielded nothing. Vanessa kept calling and asking how he was doing, but her father, unfortunately, could do nothing to please her. They were sitting down on a bench. They decided to make a plan of further action if they did not find Vivian in these barns. Suddenly, they saw 5 men emerge from the farthest shed, which they had not yet examined. When they were out of sight, the boys rushed in. The barn was dark and smelled terrible, but they saw Vivian. She was huddled in the corner, screaming in English, "Don't come near me." Then they called Andrew, and she recognized him and started crying hysterically. They brought her out into the light. She was all bruised and bloody. They beat her, tore all her clothes, and raped her as she did not resist. Decided to go to the police station and show what had been done to the Chicago citizen. Oddly enough, the police were not surprised, and so she came voluntarily to this criminal neighborhood. She was not dragged there by anyone. She knew what might be waiting for her there. How could she have known what was waiting for her? She was looking for a friend. Why didn't she take the same cab back to the city? She saw the neighborhood she was in. She came here on purpose to find adventure. If she'd been kidnapped, there'd be a crime, but here we don't see a lineup. Do you think it's normal for a girl to be in this state? If she'd enjoyed the adventure, she wouldn't have resisted. She'd have satisfied everyone, and she wouldn't have been beaten up like that. But she was raped. Is that normal in your country? Andrew wanted to leave the police station as soon as possible and come home. Vanessa met her sister in tears and wanted to hug her, but Vivian pushed her away and ran to the bathroom. 2 hours passed, but the sister didn't come out. Everyone started worrying and banging on the door. Finally, the boys broke the lock and went into the bathroom. Vivian was lying there staring dumbly at the ceiling with completely lifeless eyes. There was nothing like Vivian had been 2 days earlier. When she finally got out of the bathtub and changed her clothes, her father decided not to stay here anymore, but to go to Chicago. Vivian would need good psychological help and maybe even psychiatric help. She, at home, she locked herself in her room, refused to come out for 24 hours, refused to eat. Her father called their home doctor, a fairly elderly woman with a lot of experience, that she should be seen by a gynecologist for pregnancy, take tests to make sure she hadn't contracted any diseases, and definitely a psychologist. I will recommend you a very good specialist who pulled people out of terrible situations. Of course, there is not much good, but don't worry. She is young, healthy, time will pass, and she will come to her senses. She refused to go to the doctor. She became hysterical. So another week passed, but her condition didn't improve. The doctor, Laurel, said to give her sleeping pills and take her to the doctor. It's her health. Don't procrastinate. Andrew had arranged with the doctor in advance, and when Vivian was brought in, she was immediately admitted, examined, and tests were taken. They took blood from a vein at once so that the tests would be more accurate. When Vivian woke up, she was already in her bed. Nothing worse than waiting. Vanessa was very nervous for her sister. She had gotten gaunt, wouldn't leave the house, and kept waiting for Vivian to call her to her bedside. 3 days later, they got a call from the hospital saying that the tests were ready. Vanessa went to the hospital and from there to Laurel to see what the tests said. After seeing the tests, the doctor reassured Vanessa. She is not pregnant. Already good, there are no STIs. It is too early to check for AIDS. In a month and a half, we will take a second blood test. So it's not that bad. Now we can look at her morale. Vanessa told me all this at home. Everyone cheered up a bit. The news wasn't bad after all. Laurel gave the psychologist's phone number and told her not to hesitate to invite him to see Vivian. It had been a week since Vivian had been home, but her condition was terrible. Suddenly, Vanessa had the idea to call Daniel, to tell him about Vivian. Maybe he could help, but she forgot that her purse, where her passport, money, and phone were, had been taken from her by her rapists. But she wouldn't give up. The university wouldn't tell her the phone number, but her dad would be lucky. He got Daniel's phone number through some acquaintances, and Vanessa called him. When he heard the whole story, he was horrified. Why did she do it? Why didn't she tell me? He had many questions, but Vanessa didn't know the answers to them. So interrupting him, she asked, "You're coming to help your sister?" "I won't be able to until a week from now. I'll pick up my mom from the hospital, and then I'll be out of here." "Okay, call me as soon as I can." "Okay, call me when you get there. I'll give you the address." It took Daniel a long time to get over what he'd heard. Poor girl, what she'd been through. He had to help her. His soul was aching. He couldn't forget what Vanessa had told him. Daniel arrived as promised a week later. He was very worried. What would he tell her? How would he reassure her? But when he entered the room, everything became clear and simple. She recognized him immediately and even wanted to smile, but she didn't really succeed. But why was his heart beating so hard? Why were his palms sweating? Did he really have any feelings for her? She was also beautiful. Only her current beauty wasn't as bright, but still, she was good. Her eyes were very sad because her heart was sad. Her soul with the sad eyes was searching among the other eyes for a soul who could hear her sadness and comfort her. He did not see that Vivian, whose eyes played with devils, and every minute her head was full of crazy ideas, when he sat down on her bed, and she put her arms around his neck and sat so long. He felt that she was crying. No, come on, why these tears? You have such beautiful eyes, and tears make it hard to see them. She put her palms on his face, looked at him for a long time, and kissed him on the lips. It was so sincere and tender that Daniel pressed her against him, whispered in her ear that everything would be okay, and kissed her too. It wasn't a passionate and long kiss, but it was precious to her. She was coming to her senses and felt loved in spite of everything. "No, it's easy. Let's go for a walk around the house. I'll take you on the swings." "Oh, I don't have the strength," Vivian said quietly. "And I'll carry you in my arms and put you on the swing." "No, all right," she said, smiling for the long day she had spent in this room. The whole household sat downstairs waiting for Daniel to come out and tell them everything. But when they saw him carrying Vivian in his arms outside, there was a mute scene. Everyone turned their heads as if on cue, seeing them off with a look. They walked for a long time until Vivian was cold. Back, she quietly walked by herself. He walked her to her room and put her in bed. She looked up at him and immediately fell asleep. Daniel went downstairs where everyone was still waiting for him. "Thank you, Daniel. Vanessa thought to call you, and it was a good idea. Her daughter is better now that you're here." Andrew spoke. Daniel couldn't take his eyes off Vanessa. "You two look so much alike, like two peas in a pod." "You have a double happiness, Andrew." Bertrand said goodbye and said he'd come back tomorrow. All night, Victoria dreamed of a gypsy woman who reminded her of their first meeting, that she was the one who predicted everything. "Let me tell you another fortune," said the gypsy. "No, don't. I'm afraid of you," Vivian screamed. "Go away. Don't scare me." Vanessa heard her shout because their rooms were next to each other. She touched her shoulder and her sister woke up. Her forehead was with "I'm thirsty," she said. Vanessa quickly ran to get a bottle of water and gave it to her sister. "Me." "Where is Daniel?" Vivian asked in a weak voice. He will come later," he promised. It was July outside the window and the weather was like fall. It had been raining since morning and it was chilly. Vivian didn't want to eat, but she was sleepy. Her head fell on the pillow and sleep again took her in its soft and gentle embrace. Again, she dreamed of the gypsy woman. Your misfortunes are not yet over, you have." At this point, Vivian woke up. She was breathing heavily in her arms. Her hands were shaking as if she had Parkinson's disease. She couldn't calm down for a long time, afraid to close her eyes and see the gypsy woman again, who would tell her what trouble still awaited her. Still no Daniel. She sat down on the bed, slid her feet to the floor, and walked leisurely out of the room. For the first time in a long time, she sat at the communal table and ate lunch. "What's taking Daniel so long?" she asked Vanessa. "Let's call him," and her sister started dialing his number. But the caller was unavailable. Vivian started to get nervous, crying and saying that he was disgusted with her after the rape. At the same time, Daniel's Carvaz 2109, following the highway in the direction of Vivian's house, kept to the left side and did not exceed the speed limit. The road was difficult. It was raining. The driver of the truck drove on the side of oncoming traffic, failed to cope with the control, and collided with the car Hyundai Accent, and that in turn rammed the car Daniel. He made a few circles on the car and drove into the ditch. Fortunately, the car did not overturn. After hitting his head, he lost consciousness. When the doctors arrived, they took him out of the car, gave him first aid, and took him to the hospital for a CT scan to rule out brain damage. Clean and teeming, he was able to call Vivian and tell her what had happened to him. Vanessa went to visit him, and Erin volunteered to accompany her. Daniel's head was bandaged, but he felt fine. 3 days later, he was at Vivian's, but he had to get there by cab. His car was being repaired. He had to wait a little while because she had a psychologist. Vivian looked much better. A blush appeared on her cheeks when she saw Daniel. She smiled her white-toothed smile. There was a sparkle in her eyes. The old Vivian was coming back. Smart, beautiful, confident girl. There was still a month left before school started, and Daniel was supposed to return to Spain, but only for a couple of weeks. She was sad and already missing him. She imagined they would talk on the phone for long periods of time, and he would finally tell her that he loved her very much. Despite their good relationship, Daniel was afraid of them. The age difference intimidated him, talking at the university. A professor's connection with a student would make so much noise. He didn't know how to do the right thing so as not to ruin the girls. After all, she had just turned 19. In fact, she was a child. He will still have time to think about this difficult question, but Andrew, as if he realized that the young man has difficulties with the decision of the question and decided to help. Daniel, do you like Vivian as a woman, or are you just helping her out of her depression? Vivian is great. I like her a lot. But do I have the right to get my hopes up? I'm almost twice her age. What will she need me for in 10 years? She'll only be 29 and I'll be almost 50. Do you think I can take advantage of a girl's crush? It's a complicated question. All I want is for my daughter to be happy. And with you around, I can see her happy. Let's not rush things. I'm leaving now. And when I return, I'll solve this issue. Goodbye and goodbye to your beautiful girl. Nye. Thank you, Daniel, and have a nice soft landing. Daniel flew to Spain the day his mother was discharged from the clinic. In the evening, the family gathered around the table. Nelly had prepared a delicious dinner. Daniel had bought wine and snacks, and the evening had been very heartwarming and warm and delicious. Nelly kept glancing at Daniel, but he avoided meeting her gaze. She wanted him to propose at dinner and tell her parents. But after meeting Vivian, he didn't want to rush into it. Something was stopping him from making a final decision in his relationship with Nelly. By the end of the evening, she realized that there would be no marriage proposal, and her mood dropped to zero. She'd gotten out of the room quickly, saying things couldn't wait. No one held her back, didn't ask her to stay. Daniel walked her to the door and with a peck on the cheek said goodbye. He didn't explain anything to his parents. He had to think about everything himself. At 35, Daniel should have gotten married a long time ago. Vivian was clearly too young for that. She needs to learn. He's sure she's mistaking a crush for great love. A young girl who dreams of the role of a wife may very soon be disappointed in this status. After all, romantic relationships and marriage are far from the same things. There will no longer be secret meetings, kisses with hindsight. There will not be that adrenaline that plays in the blood. Family life will begin, in which everyone has their own responsibilities, but the husband to earn money and provide for the family, to do men's housework, and the wife to cook, to wash, to give birth. A man should make life easier for a woman, and he would do it by all means, but won't family life be a burden for a young girl who has not yet had her fill, has not had her fill? He, as an adult man, knows what he wants. The storm of hormones has already been experienced. So in a woman, he appreciates not only the appearance, attractiveness, but rather her inner world, her willingness to follow such values as family, children. Vivian is hardly ready for all this. And one more thing worried him. Very beautiful Vivian. Of course, jealousy is inherent in many men, but when following such a woman, men wring their necks will not give him peace. Despite the fact that he, as a man, has become both professionally and financially, and, it would seem, confident in himself. The feeling of jealousy is not alien to him, and with Vivian, he'll always live like a volcano. That's what Daniel thought lying in his room, about his future relationship with Vivian. His thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. It was Nelly. There was still no avoiding the conversation, and he answered it. Yes, Nelly, is something wrong? Yes, it is. I want to ask you, is there not going to be a marriage proposal? Don't feel sorry for me, just tell it like it is. Don't keep me on a short leash or on reserve. You know how I feel about you, and I don't deserve to be treated like I don't exist and we haven't agreed on anything. Daniel didn't interrupt her the whole time, but listened intently. He realized she was right, but he didn't understand what was holding him back from proposing to her. Nayli, give me a couple or 3 more days and I'll make up my mind. No offense. Is that a deal? Deal, and she was the first to disconnect. His mind went back to his thoughts. Nayli is 29 years old. She's accomplished as a professional, financially independent, self-sufficient. The best age to get married and have children. She's a decent person, kind, sincere, loves children. And how does she cook? You can't beat it. She's not beautiful, but she's pretty. Here she is, a ready wife and future mother to your children. What's there to think about? If you marry Nayli, you will never regret your choice, said the inner voice with which he always liked to argue. You've known her for years, a trusted companion, and importantly, your parents like her. Yes, that's true. His mom, Jezebel, told him to marry Nayli, that's all. And you like her yourself, because you have to go to bed with her, not your mom, the inner voice advised. Before I met Vivian, I thought I loved her. Well, then it's settled. Call and propose, commanded the inner voice. I will. Nayli is my man, but Vivian will meet her prince. He will be younger, prettier, and of course, he will love her very much, because it is impossible not to love such a beautiful woman. The next day, he called Nayli and invited her to visit him. Taking her by the hand, he went up to his parents and said, Mom, Dad, I'm getting married. This is my future wife. Do you bless me for my union with her? And his parents said yes. They decided to get married on New Year's Day. Every year on the 31st, they would celebrate their family day. Nayli was happy because there was no one in her life she loved more than Daniel. Her dream had come true and she would soon be Nayli. Tyler sounds like it. She loved everything about Daniel from the university. Daniel quit because he realized that Vivian had no brakes. She would wait for him, worry. He would just feel sorry for this girl who had already been through too much lately. Just before the school year, he called her, congratulated her, wished her success and excellent marks. She spoke to him quite cheerfully, so she was in a good mood. After that, he threw away the old SIM card and inserted a new one. He noted to himself that he did it all with regret, but there was no turning back. Family life was ahead, and it was necessary to prepare for it morally. They applied to the registry office and began to prepare for the wedding. He moved to live with Nayli. She had her own apartment and he had a rented one. They were not going to have a big wedding. They would rather spend the money at a ski resort in fabulous Switzerland. Both were skiing well, so there were no disputes about where to go. At the Swiss resort, the young wanted to celebrate the new year once again, preparing for the wedding, for the new year, invitations to guests. All this made our newlyweds twirl and turn, but there was really a lot to do. Daniel helped Nayli in everything. Friends did not sit idle either. September 1st, 3rd year. How quickly time flies. Just out of high school with Vanessa and already in her 3rd year of college. The first thing she did was to look at the schedule of the 2nd year to see when she could see Daniel. His class was scheduled 3 times a week. Like us, nothing in the schedule had changed. I'll come by tomorrow and say hello. I miss him so much, Vivian thought languidly, closing her eyes. She didn't even notice that the name of the teacher was different from the name of the subject. She was so engrossed in the upcoming meeting that she bumped her forehead against Jacko's. No, look how mature you've become. What a handsome man. What shoulders, Jax. You should go into modeling. You look really good. Do you really like me? Maybe we could go out, celebrate the beginning of school. No, Zaniechka, I don't mean like you. You're handsome, no argument, but you're not mine. As a friend, I won't give you to anyone. Got it? Understood, Jax said with a faded look. While they were talking to Jax, dozens of guys' eyes opened wider at the sight of Vivian, especially the freshman. Pretty girl. What year are you in now? The older ones asked. Go, you're still young, answered them the girl. The next day, she chose her outfit more carefully. Her makeup was minimal. She knew that Daniel liked it better. As she approached the auditorium where he was supposed to have his lecture, she waited stubbornly for him. Students came in. Many she knew and said hello, but here a man showed up. But it wasn't Daniel. He came to the door and asked Vivian, "Will you be coming in?" "No, I'm looking for Daniel." "I don't know who he is. I'm sorry." She rushed to the dean's office. "Tally, honey, where's Daniel?" "Well, he quit back in the summer." "He quit. Do you know where he went?" "No, nobody knows exactly, but they say he quit teaching. He's working as a consultant for some firm. I don't know which one." She didn't know what to compare her condition to. She'd been run over by a skating rink. "She's dead, she's gone." "Is he disgusted with me after what happened?" "Well, he realizes it could happen to anyone. Not just anyone. It could happen to you. Because you're reckless. The inner voice couldn't bear not to hear. You shut up, nobody's asking you. I'm sick of being without you, Vivian sharply retorted. She didn't want to study anymore today. She went to Vanessa's faculty, broke her out of class, and they went for a walk, eating ice cream and talking. Yeah, talking, because that's what she needed most right now. How could he, Vanessa, say nothing and just disappear from my life? But you should call him, her sister said. She dialed his number, but there was no answer. He changed his SIM card. Listen, I know where he lives. Let's go. Well, let's go, Vanessa said reluctantly. She didn't like this situation. It was high time her sister calmed down and moved on. It was not her man. There were other people living in the apartment where the previous tenant had gone. They had no idea. Her last hope of finding Daniel was gone. She hadn't been to the university for the third day, lying there with her arms stretched out along her torso. Vanessa sat next to her, talking to her the whole time. Vanessa, well, if he didn't want to commit his personal life to me, we could have stayed friends, couldn't we? What do you think? Oh, I think it's a bad idea. Why do you think that? Because you're not ready for it. It's just that you'd be trying to keep him in your own life with the hope of getting him back. Well, think about it. Would you be able to handle that kind of friendship? I bet you'd want more than that, wouldn't you? Vivian was silent for a long time and then answered, yes, I'd get him with this friendship. And we'd probably become enemies. That's what I'm saying. Vanessa, maybe I should find a replacement for him. I have a lot of choices at the university. No, dear sister, you shouldn't. Take a rest. Realize the experience, analyze the former relationship so you don't make mistakes later. Don't get yourself worked up. Do not build yourself a jilted bride, by the way, which you have never been. Minimize the tragedy of the situation. Nothing fatal happened. No. Look, Vanessa, maybe I should go to a fortune teller. Max, you're losing your mind. You don't need a fortune teller. Daniel didn't promise you anything. He said you're not a couple. Didn't he? Isn't that right? That's it. Go to sleep and go to school tomorrow. Okay? Yes, tomorrow for school. Thank you, sis. You're welcome. They kissed and left to meet again tomorrow. 5 years had passed since the above events. During this time, the girls graduated from university and worked for Andrew at the firm. Vanessa was a senior lawyer in the department, and Vivian headed the economic department, and very successfully. She was a strict boss, sometimes even harsh, but everyone loved her because Victoria Andreevna was fair. She always helped her employees and noticed good work. Vanessa was getting ready to get married. Aaron proposed to her and she agreed. Vivian, on the other hand, was never able to give her heart to someone. She still hadn't gotten over denial, even though she hadn't seen him since and he hadn't made himself known. She searched for him on social media but couldn't find him. He even contacted the computer aces, but they said he wasn't registered there, and Denial lived and worked not that far from Vivian. He married Naili and they had a son, Pete, and a daughter, Vivian. One day, while sorting through the piles of magazines that were already falling out of her nightstand, Vivian saw a 3-year-old family magazine that she bought on an occasional basis. On the front cover, she saw Daniel with his wife and children. Inside on the spread was a huge article about the Queen family, and the art of being a family. That was the title of the article. Why hadn't she seen this magazine before? How could it have passed her by? Vivian read it several times in a row. A welcoming atmosphere reigns in the family of Daniel and Naili Tyler. Their friendly family consists of 4 people: mom, dad, darling daughter, Vivian's son, Pete. As the head of the family, Daniel told us, he knew his wife from the Institute. He could not resist such a beauty. The wedding was played. Every time she read to this point, she threw the magazine and began to remember again and again their meetings with Daniel. Daniel's son is 2 years old and his daughter is a year old. So now the kids are 5 and 4 years old. Why did he name his daughter Vivi? Isn't there any other name? So he wanted to leave a memory of her, or maybe love. She asked her father to get Daniel's address from the magazine editor. She just wanted to meet him and talk to him. Dad sent a public relations woman to the magazine's editor, very knowledgeable, very talkative, explained the situation to her in general terms. All right, Andrew, I'll try to help you. A week went by. My father had some very interesting information. He didn't know how to tell his daughter. Knowing her impulsive nature, he kept putting off talking about it, but Vivian felt that her father knows something, but she does not tell her. So one day she went to his office and told him she wouldn't leave until he told her. He started by saying that Daniel was a widower. No. What did you say? He's raising the kids alone. Vivian, sit down and calm down. That's why I didn't want to tell you as long as possible. No. Stop it, Dad. Talk to me. I'm nervous enough as it is. Yes, I am. Her father, knowing his crazy daughter who was pacing the office from corner to corner, asked her to sit down and not to rush him. Taking a deep breath, he began to tell what he had learned about. 3 years ago, his wife, Nayeli, was the editor of this magazine. She was described as a good person and knowledgeable. 3 years ago, she and other staff members were in an area contaminated by radiation. Nayeli decided to interview those who were left behind to live with their families in those areas. There was a terrible mortality rate there, especially child deaths. But people had nowhere to go and stayed in their homes. There was a huge article about these families, children in her magazine. The authorities before this article did not want to recognize this problem, but Natalia disrupted this anthill and these families began to help. But after a year, she herself began to feel bad. At first, she wrote it all off as fatigue, but when it became unbearable, she went to the doctor. She was diagnosed with cancer, already at the 2nd stage. She underwent surgery, and a year later she relapsed. After more surgeries and chemotherapy, she died last year. Daniel was left with 2 children. Since his parents are in Spain, his mom Nayeli came to visit him. She now lives in his house and helps with the children. He works a lot. He has to support the house and the 2 children. It's not easy. That's about it, I guess. Did she get his address or phone number? I did, but I don't think you should call him, let alone go to his place. The kid's grandmother might not like it. It hasn't been that long yet. Wait, don't rush him. Dad, I want to offer to help. Vivian, you know you can't do anything to help. Distracting him from the kids, making him nervous, yes, but he doesn't need that yet. He's still fresh in his mind. Vivian knew her father was right, but she was afraid of losing him again. A man like that would never be ignored by a woman, but she decided to wait. A couple of times she went to his house and saw him from afar. She saw the children greeting him, Nayeli's mother walking with them. But she had the good sense not to get out of the car, but to watch from the sidelines. 6 months later, without saying anything to her father, she drove up to his house, and when she saw him get out of the car, she went out to meet him. Well, hello, Danielle. How long I've waited for this meeting. But if you tell me to leave now, I won't be here again. Nay, hello, Vivian. No, I won't. I'm very glad to see you. Come on, I'll introduce you to my children. Is this comfortable? Am I disturbing anyone? No one, it's fine. Seeing the beautiful woman, Nayeli's mother, with her lips pressed together, retreated to her room. And the children surrounded their father. It was obvious that they were happy to see him. Kids, I'd like you to meet my friend Vivian. Pete was the first to be introduced. Beautiful, just like a princess. I'm Pete. No. What can I call you? What do you like? Reese. Pete sounds gentle and affectionate. I think I'm going to call you that too. Okay, said the boy. And little Vivi hid behind her daddy and didn't want to go near a strange aunt, even though she was beautiful. But Vivian gave her a doll when the child gave in. For the rest of the evening, she sat in the arms of the strange aunt. Then everyone drank tea, but Daniel's mother-in-law never came out, though the children called for her. The children had to go to bed, and Vivian went home. Will you be coming again? Asked Pete. No. If your daddy says I can, I'd love to. Daddy will let me, said Danielle. He walked Vivian to the car and they said goodbye. As soon as Danielle entered the house, his mother-in-law immediately flew up to him and began to complain that you've already forgotten your wife, got yourself a woman and even brought her home. You've forgotten my daughter in 2 years and you've been going out with women. Samantha, don't say things you don't know. Vivian is an old acquaintance of mine, former student. I've never forgotten Nayeli and I never will. Then why did she come to our house? Swear to me you're not having an affair with her, my mother-in-law asked in a raised tone of voice. Well, first of all, I'm not going to swear anything to you. She came to my house. And secondly, my friends can come to me, or I have to ask your permission who can come to me and who cannot. I'm an adult and will decide for myself who I will socialize with and when. I'm very grateful for your help, but if it's in exchange for controlling my personal life, I'd rather put my kids in daycare. Samantha said, I'm sorry. Samantha was afraid that her son-in-law could deprive her of communication with her grandchildren and lowered the degree of claims. You do not take offense at me. It just hurt for my daughter. She just died, and you've already found someone else. I've said my piece, Samantha, and I'm not going back to this conversation. I told you before and I'll tell you now. If there's a woman my children love, she'll be my wife. Of course, I won't be single all my life, however much you may wish it. At the same time, I never forget Neeli for a moment, and I'm very grateful to her for the years we've been together. The week passed quietly. Vivian neither came nor called. Sunday afternoon, she came over and invited me to take the kids for a walk. There's nothing for them to do outside. It's cold out there. They can catch cold, said the mother-in-law, as always loudly and with an irritated intonation. No. And we'll go to the shopping center. It's warm there, lots of entertainment. I think the children will like it. Said Vivian in a calm tone. Who do you think you are? She thinks. Samantha mocked her. Your opinion is nobody here, eh? But Daniel came up and the mother-in-law faltered. Daniel told the kids to get dressed. We're going out. Yay, shouted the children. Of course, Grandma loved them, but they had been at home all week, walking around the house. They, understandably, wanted entertainment. While riding in the car, Vivian talked to Pete. He knew a lot of fairy tales and talked about good and evil, but he didn't know letters, he couldn't read, and he was already 6 years old. Vivi was still a little girl, but it was time for her to study a little too. Daniel, kids need to be put in daycare. They don't socialize with their peers, they don't do anything but read stories. That's good, but it's not enough. Children need to develop. Daniel didn't say anything, but realized that Vivian was right. When they arrived, they went to the children's entertainment center. The kids were playing there and Pete came over too. He looked at first, but then he wanted to play too. He started pushing the kids to get into the center. The kids didn't like that and they started pushing him too. Daniel wanted to intervene, but Vivian stopped him. This is what I told you about. He doesn't know how to play in a group because he doesn't socialize with his peers. Don't rush him, let him try to solve the problem. But the kid took offense and ran to complain to his dad. Daniel explained to him as best he could that he was wrong. We didn't get home until the evening. The children were happy, though tired. Saying goodbye, Vivian told him to think about what she said. Daniel found a private kindergarten and put the children there. But it cost him some of his life. At home, there was a huge scandal. The mother-in-law did not try to restrain herself and was not shy in expression. This girl hummed in your ear that the children should be given to a kindergarten. Right? I can see right through that bitch. She wants to get into bed with you, so she's all about the kids and you. But I ain't gonna let that happen. Next time, she'll be out of this house like a cork out of a bottle. It could be your mistress. Why did you name your daughter Vivian so you wouldn't forget about her? Isn't that a steep price to pay, Samantha? You're a smart woman and you want what's best for your grandchildren. Do you think they need to socialize with their peers? Do they need to know something other than the stories you read to them? Should they be ready for school? Why don't you tell me I'm wrong? That's just it. And about the name Vivian, that's what Neeli called her and you know it well. The mother-in-law didn't say anything and left, slamming the door. The children loved the daycare center. Only the teacher complained that Pete hurt the children if they didn't give him a toy. The kids complained to their parents and they complained to me. I explained to him how to behave, but he was very offended by me and all day long. You see, he sits in the corner. You should talk to him at home. Daniel didn't think Vivian would be so right. For 6 months, he'd been struggling with Pete and how to deal with the kids, and the teacher would tell denially. We won. He started to communicate with the kids and they accepted him. I'm so happy for the kid. He did it. And Niall was also proud of his son, but he was even more grateful to Vivian. Vanessa and Aaron's wedding day was approaching. Daniel received an invitation. They entered the wedding hall together with Vivian. She was over the moon. The wedding was grand. There were not many people, just close family and friends, but it was a lot of fun. Songs, dances, toasts, and a very beautiful toast was given by Daniel. A wedding is a special celebration. Beautiful, unforgettable. Many people say that after the wedding from the relationship leaves all the romance and remain only gray everyday life. I would like to tell you that everything depends only on you. Remember this always, because how you will build a family life such it will turn out as a result. Happiness to you, and let the flame that burns between you nowhere never disappear. Bitter, she'd never danced with him before. And now he asked her to dance and said thank you in her ear, that she was in his life again. His arm was around her waist and he held her tightly in his embrace. She was only afraid of one thing, that the music would end quickly and he would rush home to his children. But she reassured herself that he wouldn't be lost for so long now, especially since he didn't want to be. She had much to ask him, to find out how he had lived all this time. But she had matured, become more mature, and waited for her time. She knew it would come soon. The house became more crowded. Aaron came to live with his wife, even though he had a nice apartment. They were together 24 hours a day. At work, Vanessa was his subordinate, and at home, Aaron obeyed Vanessa in everything. But her sister wondered how they didn't bore each other. Perhaps it was love. Vanessa was a wise and patient woman. All the sharp corners she smoothed with one word, and always said that the main in the family, Aaron. This gave the husband confidence in himself, and he thanked Vanessa for it. As soon as Pete's kindergarten was going well, Vivian offered to hire a teacher to prepare him for school. I have an employee in my department, Alechka. Her mother is an elementary school teacher, but retired. Let her come to Pete's house once a week, say on Saturday, and tutor him. Vivi would need to be tutored too, but since she's younger, they have different curriculums, I guess. But I think Vivi would hear and see everything, and it would be good for her too. I understand that it's hard for you to provide for 2 children alone, and these services have never been cheap. But I can help you by giving you a bonus on top of Olga's salary to pay for Pete's tuition. Vivian, thank you, but it's not necessary. I earn good money, and I can pay my son's tuition. Don't humiliate me. I'm a man, and I've always felt responsible for my family and children. No offense, Denial, I mean it in the best of intentions. Then I'll make a deal, and we'll start school on Saturday. Nay, thank you, Vivian. You've been a great help. On Saturday, as agreed, Narmin came to Pete's house. He liked her immediately. As Vivian had expected, her daughter stood like a tin soldier and absorbed what the teacher was saying to Pete. Samantha was the only one who wasn't satisfied. The children were being bored with their lessons, teaching and teaching as if they wouldn't have time to learn everything in school. But when in a month, both children knew all the letters and Pete was already reading by syllables, she cried, kissed him on the top of his head and said, "What a good boy you are. You're just like your mommy. She'd be proud of you." 6 months later, Pete was reading remarkably well, counting to 20 and solving simple examples. The child learned to retell what he had read, which developed his speech and increased his vocabulary. The question of choosing a school came up. There was a school in the cottage community, but Daniel wanted a more prestigious one. Vivian advised him to give to this school, which is not far from his home. Your mother-in-law might get sick. You're on a business trip. The child can get to school on his own. It's quiet here. There's security, no strangers' cars. And when you go to high school, you can transfer to a prestigious school. Carmen will also come at first to help the child to do his homework. And in 4 years, we'll see. Daniel agreed with Vivian's arguments, and Pete went to a school near the house. Everyone came to see him off to first grade. His grandmother, sister, father, and Aunt Vivian. The child was very happy, felt supported, and was not afraid of anything. Little Vivi was raring to go to her brother. She wanted to stand next to him and hold his hand. Finally, Denial let her go, and she went over to Pete and stood beside him. She didn't want to go home, so she went to class with him. Then they were brought home together. The first day, there were no classes, but there was a Knowledge Day holiday. For the first time, Samantha saw him off and met him from school. And after 2 months, he was already walking with other children on his own, so the adults had calculated everything correctly. Carmen came to Pete, did lessons with him, and was very pleased with her student. Daniel saw that it was hard for her to come to her son every day, so he offered her to live in the house, and on Saturday he would take her home. She agreed because she wanted to give up her classes. Age was taking its toll. Samantha sulked at first, did not even speak, but seeing the peaceful and calm character of Norman became softer. They talked a lot about life, took walks, drank tea, and the mother-in-law was glad of such a neighborhood. Vivian and Denial were very timidly establishing a relationship. She was sure that a relationship with a man would bring her what she needed: love, tenderness, attention. Everything a woman gets when she is loved. She was not in a hurry or active. After all, sometimes a woman herself begins to rush events or worse, to lead the process, which is very frightening and repulses a man. Being a mature lady, she did not rush events, did not push the man, and gave him the opportunity to sort out his feelings. She did not call him first, did not impose meetings. She waited for activity on his part and was afraid to scare away the fragile happiness that smiled on her after 5 years. She realized that after a few meetings, she shouldn't treat it like she was marrying him tomorrow. She was very afraid of hurting his feelings for his ex-wife. That was another reason that kept her in no hurry. She didn't want to take up all of his free time and space with her. She also realized that a mature man doesn't show his feelings right away. And denial was far from being a boy. Despite her mother-in-law's displeasure, they met, went to the theater and movies, spent time with their children, who missed their father very much, but were not in a hurry to go to bed, although both of them wanted it very much. Pete finished first grade. He studied easily. Norman praised him very much. Daniel thanked her for her work, for her warm attitude to Pete, gave her a salary, a bonus, and let her go on vacation. It was almost a year and a half after their meeting, but nothing had moved forward. Daniel did not make any steps for rapprochement, and Vivian lost hope for personal happiness. She decided to go on vacation to a warm place, to bask in the sun, to think and maybe start a new life. A whole new life without Danielle. She took the tickets and flew away. The sea, the sun, the white sand was beautiful. What a nice vacation. She only now remembered that she hadn't been on vacation in 2 years. Work, her new position, it took up all her time. She slept as peacefully as a baby. It had been 10 days since she'd been in this magical place, but it was as if she hadn't rested yet. One day, she dreamed again of a gypsy woman from that distant time. This time, she was friendlier. "Well, why are you afraid of me? I remember you screaming and crying so I wouldn't scare you. Everything I predicted for you came true. Now I can tell you what's next for you. Would you like that? No, don't. Let it stay the way it is. What's going to happen is going to happen. You once told me I wasn't cut out for married life, but I think you were wrong about that. I want to get married, I want kids, but I can't. Well, there are single people. No. Don't worry, you won't get married for a long time, but everything will end well. And most importantly, you're in for a great surprise. You have no idea, but it's going to make you happy." And she was gone. Vivian opened her eyes hard. Her head hurt a little, so she decided that she would not go to the beach today. She took a shower, ate breakfast, and felt better. "No, I'll go to the beach, at least to lie down in the shade, get some sea air." She dozed off again and woke up to someone looking at her. Opening her eyes, she saw Daniel looking at her and smiling. "Well, you wanted to run away and I found you here too. Why did you disappear so suddenly? I thought I would never see you again." I thought, well, I can't wait for Daniel to be nice to me. I've got to do something about it and start living without him. Get used to everyone going their own way. "No, Vivian, we'll go together, if that's okay with you." "No, I don't mind because I love him." Pete graduated from elementary school with an honorable mention. Norman was a great credit to him for teaching him so much. His daughter finished 3rd grade. Daniel and Vivian decided to organize a party for the children. They invited friends and girlfriends from school, invited clowns, and set up tables right outside. The children had fun, and in the evening there was fireworks, a very beautiful sight. It was already getting dark. Parents came to pick up the children and barely took them all home. The holiday turned out to be a glory. Even Samantha enjoyed it. Vivian wanted to go home, but Daniel suggested she stay and go only in the morning. But Samantha had a point here too. It's late for kids, but it's not too late for adults to go home, especially by car. No way she wanted another woman next to Daniel. Well, Vivian didn't argue, packed up and left. As she passed her mother-in-law, Daniel, "Thank God she's gone or she'd be here all night. As long as I'm alive, no woman will come here." Daniel realized he had to make things right with Vivian. The kids adored her, and she was great to them too, not a mom to the kids. With these thoughts in mind, he drove to her place. On the way, he bought flowers, stopped at a jewelry store, and bought a ring. The closer he drove to her house, the more his heart pounded. It had been almost 6 years since Naila had been gone. He'd never had a relationship with anyone but Vivian. He'd liked her then, he liked her now, but did he love her? Yes, he knew he did. Fear of losing her speaks to his true feelings for this woman. He has a desire to protect, pity her, care for, and defend her. It speaks of love and tender feelings for her. He truly admired his Vivian, and apart from her, he needed no one. She was a sensual woman, a real gift for a man. She was always emotional and lived with an open heart. She wanted love, tenderness from him, and she liked to express her feelings in a physical way, a kiss, a hug. It was nice to feel how she reacted to his touch. She was always trembling, and that made him delighted. Yes, she was a gorgeous woman. That's what Daniel thought as he pulled up in front of her house, seeing Daniel with a bouquet of flowers from the window. Vivian paced nervously around the room, anticipating a change in her personal life. And she was not mistaken. Right from the door, handing her a bouquet of flowers, He gave her a ring and asked her to marry. She hung on him with joy and, covering his face with kisses, repeated, "Yes, yes, 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 yes." She did not let him take off his dress. She wouldn't let him take off his cloak. She hugged him and wouldn't let him go. Why do the tears flow so much? Why do my eyes sting so much? The mascara. It smeared on her face and made her look ugly. Grace, don't look at me. I'm ugly now. You never were. But now you're the prettiest and happiest, my girl. And finally, he allowed himself to relax and kiss her. How long she had waited for this. I am the happiest woman in the world. You understand me? The very, very one? Of course I understand, because I'm just as happy. No, come on, let's go tell Daddy. Andrew was working in his office and was happy to see Daniel. Daddy, Daniel proposed to me, and I said yes. I'm about to become the wife of the best man in the world. Will you bless us? No, can I not, when my daughter is the happiest I've ever seen. For a father, that's all that matters. Vanessa and Aaron came and congratulated the newlyweds. Vanessa moved quietly. It was hard for her. She was about to give birth to twins. Men. Aaron was happy to be the father of 2 sons. Danielle, please move him into our home. I found him a good English school. I think we should leave Vivi with Samantha for now because it would be cruel to deprive her of her grandchildren so abruptly. Friday night, we'll all go over to her place. It's a long winter break, so we'll all be together. And as soon as she finishes 4th grade, we'll put her in Pete's school. I think we should do that. I'll think about it, said Daniel. How to do it without offending anyone. I'll go. I still have to talk to my mother-in-law. I don't think she'll be as happy as your dad. They kissed and he left. Samantha, I've decided to get married. I've just proposed to a woman you know very well. It's been 6 years since Nayeli's been with us. The children need a mother and I need a woman I love. Vivian is the best person for that role. The children adore her and she's wonderful to them, so I see no reason to delay the marriage. We haven't set a date yet, but I think it'll be soon. I always knew you were a bastard. I don't know if Nayeli told you, but I was against her marrying you. There's no place to test you. You're only interested in women. She was deliberately insulting him, using the most hurtful language to make him mad, and then accuse him of being unbalanced and not trustworthy with children. Daniel sat with his fists clenched so tightly that his hands were white. I'm sure, my mother-in-law continued, that you've had this girl before, and you cheated on my daughter with her. It's just that Nayeli loved you so much she didn't want to see it. And I offered to keep an eye on you, but she wouldn't let me, which is a shame. I would have brought you to light. You're such a cheapskate. Samantha, what you want me to do, tell me if I can do it, but I'm not listening to any more of this crap. You don't have to get married. No other woman can come into this house where the mother of your children lived. Thousands of men live widowed and don't marry. They don't die. And here it's only been 6 years and he's already thinking of getting married. Good people, look at this womanizer. Where's it seen that someone else's impudent grandmother, my grandchildren called Mom? I won't allow it. So as far as I understand, you don't want me to get married. No, I don't. And you have no right to ignore my opinion. All right, dear mother-in-law. I have long endured all your insults and insults for the sake of Nayeli's memory and for the sake of the children you love. But I see that your rudeness has gone beyond all limits. Whatever you do, I'm getting married. If you insult me as you did today, you'll pack your suitcase and go back to your village. I won't stand for this rudeness any longer. If you turn your children against me, there'll be no place for you in this house. Think about it. You've got all night. If you don't agree with me, you'll pack your bags and go home in the morning. If you stay, I'll know you've accepted the inevitable. Oh, I forgot to tell you something else. Pete will live at Vivian's house from September 1st and attend English school there. You, if you agree, of course, will stay here with your granddaughter for another year. And after a year, I'll take her away and she'll go to school with Pete too. You could stay in the house. It's more comfortable than yours. But you know the conditions. Now I've said everything. Think about it. I won't change my mind. What kind of father are you? You're a snake, not a father. Nayeli can see everything from above. She and I won't let you live. Okay, Samantha, I'll take you right now while I have time. I'm waiting for you. Don't wait for me. You gave me till morning, so I'll decide what I'm going to do in the morning. Or are you going to kick the old woman out? Or better yet, beat her up? Nay, Samantha, I admire your imagination. Where do you get all this stuff? Have I ever hurt you, humiliated you, or worse, hit you? Where is this coming from? It's like I'm having a bad dream and I can't wake up. Or stop fantasizing and go get some rest. I'll be up in the morning. and he went to say goodnight to the children, who wouldn't fall asleep until he performed this ritual. In the morning, the mother-in-law did not come out for breakfast, and the children ran to her room to see their grandmother. She was lying there with high blood pressure, and Daniel called an ambulance. They gave her a shot and told her to lie down for a day. Daniel called work and took the day off to be with the kids. He didn't want to leave the house, so he wouldn't leave Samantha alone, so he didn't go anywhere with the kids, and they played in the backyard. For a whole week, the mother-in-law didn't talk to them. She didn't know what to do. Her anger at Daniel for her daughter was getting out of hand. She was afraid to snap, not to be rude to him again, and not to have a stroke. She decided to call Nina Ivanovna. Having told her everything in detail, she was sure that she would be on her side. But her friend listened to her for a long time, kept silent, and finally decided to express her opinion. "It's sad, dear Samantha. What you're doing is not a good example for your grandchildren. Your jealousy has blinded you. I must commend your son-in-law for his tact and patience with you. Doing someone else's monastery with their own statutes, wise people do not climb. You're only making things worse by your behavior. It's been 6 years since Daniel left his wife, but life goes on. I realize losing a daughter is not just a grief. It's a tragedy, especially since you have but your son-in-law is a young man. He has children to raise. The girl needs her mom. Soon she'll have questions that only a woman can answer. She won't be able to tell her dad everything, and she loves Vivian. But my daughter, if she was alone, she'd never marry. She'd be faithful to that scoundrel. So why does he have to get married? Samantha, you can't even control yourself when you talk to me right now, and you're calling Daniel names. That is not the behavior of a grown woman. And as for your Nayeli's marriage, I'll tell you this. It's harder for a woman with 2 children to get married. It's not just her desire. There must be a man who loves her and her children, and then a woman has a very short reproductive age, and men want their children. That's why your son-in-law is marrying a woman half his age. If you love your grandchildren and want to continue to communicate with them, if you value the memory of your daughter, do not persecute the man she loves so much. Your son-in-law is a decent man, an excellent and caring father. For 6 years, he's kept your daughter's memory alive. He has a right to be happy. Don't interfere with him. I would advise you to be kinder to him, more compliant, and you will spend your whole life near your beloved grandchildren. Patience and wisdom. That's not what I expected from you. I thought you'd support me. What am I supposed to do? Bless him or something? Well, at least stay out of the way. Okay, Norman, thanks for the lesson. I get it. And she went to her room to prepare for her final battle with her son-in-law. She decided to take the children to her village, and before leaving to call the guardianship authorities, let them come and ask the grief-stricken father, "Where are your children?" Let him answer if he can. Of course, she realized that the children will not be taken away from him, but she will get on his nerves before the wedding. My poor daughter, if you knew what's going on in our kingdom. She cried looking at her daughter's picture. She called the guardianship authorities, told them about the children, where half of the information was taken from TV series, asked when they could come and see all this. The lady with the squeaky voice said she'd get a call back. The next day, she got an early call back before Daniel had even left for work. She was afraid he would figure it out, so she went up to her room to "Hello, Samantha," squeaked the same familiar voice. "Inga will be able to come to you tomorrow afternoon. Have a good day." She heard the dial tone and disconnected the phone. Frankly speaking, she regretted her action. She was afraid, but the deed was done and there was no further retreat. The next day, as soon as Daniel left for work, she did not clean up the table, but instead scattered the children's things and left with the children to her village. The inspection came when no one was home, and after waiting for a while, they saw a car drive up to the house and an imposing man get out of it. The women looked at each other and, as if on command, began to tidy themselves. One fixed her hair, another raised her bust higher, and the third looked in the mirror and painted her lips. Manned up, they waited for the man to come closer. "Daniel, good afternoon. We're from child welfare. May I speak to your children and see their living conditions?" He immediately realized that this was his mother-in-law's last effort before he got married. She didn't get it. "Come on, I'll show you around." The youngest, Tina, gave a thumbs up to her friend. "Oh my God, what a man!" As he opened the door and let the women in, he was surprised that no one was home. "Where are your children?" The most experienced woman asked sternly. She was both older than the others and, apparently, In her position, Daniel realized that if he said, "I don't know," they would immediately give a verdict. A bad father who doesn't watch his children. To gather his thoughts, he motioned for everyone to sit down and said, "He's out with Samantha. She's his ex-wife's grandmother's mother. And where they're walking, you can call them, invite them home. We want to talk to them. While you're calling them, show them your kids' rooms." And they followed Daniel up to the second floor of the house. The kids' rooms are always such a mess and 3 layers of dust, and she ran her finger along the shelves where the children's books and toys were. No, of course, apparently, the grandmother was in a hurry to go out with the grandchildren and did not put the rooms in order. "I see," said Irina Sergeyevna in a snide and gravely voice. "So we will wait for your children today." "No, my mother-in-law's phone is not available." "No, it's a pity. I'll have to deprive such a father of his parental rights." "What's that for?" "The dust on the shelves. You never see that in your house, do you?" "Don't be rude, my dear. It could cost you." "Are you threatening me?" "No, of course not, but I'm telling you how it could end. Night tomorrow, early in the morning, we'll come again." And they walked out of the gate in a single file. Daniel called Reka and asked her to come over today and clean the house. He told her to bring a helper with her so that everything would be clean today. He waited for them and went to the village to pick up the children. He was sure that his mother-in-law had taken the children there. An hour later he was there. The children were already going to sleep. "Quickly gather your things and get in the car," the father commanded. The children were happy to see him and quickly ran to the car. Sophia stood on the hood and looked at her son-in-law with bulging eyes. I don't want to see in my house anymore. You have no place there. Nayeli must be turning over in her grave from your antics, but it won't make any difference. The wedding is in August." As they drove away, he saw Samantha running out the back window, waving her fists at him. She arrived at his house again in the middle of the night. When he opened the door for her, she walked with her head down and went up to her room. At exactly 9 o'clock in the morning, the women's team arrived at Daniel's house in the same formation. The children were already eating breakfast when the guests entered the house. After talking to the kids, they went up to their rooms again. After looking at the perfect order, they went downstairs. "Well, Daniel, we liked everything. You seem to be a good father, or rather, trying to be one. That's commendable. We'll check in with you from time to time to see how the kids are growing up. Goodbye. Good luck to you." Tina looked at Daniel with eyes that said more than words could say. But Daniel paid her no attention. And they left. Daniel decided not to start the conversation with his mother-in-law first. Samantha, after a phone call with a friend and a check from the child welfare authorities, started it herself. "Danielle, I've been thinking a lot about the rest of our lives, and you're free to do what you want. I've realized what I've been saying is resentment for my daughter, jealousy. I'll even admit to you that I called the child welfare authorities to take the kids away from you. Then I thought about my daughter. She wouldn't forgive me. She loved you too much, but it was too late to cancel their visit. I thought long and hard about whether to tell you, but I figured if I didn't, it would be a sin on my soul. I was going to give you a heart attack, but I was going to call an ambulance later. My hands were shaking when I poured that medicine in your tea, but I couldn't. The kids ran up to you and hugged you. I thought, if God took their mother from them, what am I going to do with them as orphans? I can't lift them up and make them happy. I poured out the tea. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm sorry I overreacted. I'll tell you right off, I hate your Vivian and I never will. She took my daughter's place undeservedly, but I'll put up with her for the grandchildren. I'd rather you were a widower, but I realize you're a young man and you need a family. Tonight we're closing this subject and burying the hatchet. For the sake of my grandchildren, I'm ready to step on my own toes. Thank you, Samantha, for your candor. I want to tell you that we're getting married at the end of August because then we're going to my parents' house with the kids. They haven't seen them in a long time and they miss them. John, said the mother-in-law, cried, and with the words, "Do as you please," went to her room. The wedding day came, the most unforgettable day in the life of newlyweds. It's a once-in-a-lifetime celebration, and the happiness it brings lasts a lifetime. For Vivian, the white dress, the flowers, the ransom. All these wedding trappings were of no importance. What mattered to her was to hear Daniel say yes when he answered the question, "Do you, Daniel, want to take Vivian as your wife?" After all, it would be said in front of all the guests and witnesses. And it is nothing less than a declaration of love, and it is a most favorite tune to her ears. For them, this was a momentous day. This is their first and main love ball, which will be remembered forever, and will open a new life for them, a married life. Daniel kept his eyes on her. You embarrass me. You don't know how proud I am when other men turn around and look at you. My vocabulary is so poor. I can't tell you how amazed I am by your beauty. Standing at the check-in, Vivian heard, "No, God, so beautiful, so old." She didn't recognize who it was, and she didn't turn around. But she heard the answer and recognized the voice of her beloved little sister. He is the love of her life, and she doesn't want anything else. Good for Vanessa. She said it right, and she snuggled closer to Daniel. The mother-in-law didn't come to the wedding. No one really wanted her there. She'd only spoil everyone's mood, though everyone sympathized with her grief. The kids were a few days late for school and stayed with their grandparents. After the wedding, Samantha had calmed down a bit and treated Vivian like family. Ciara was half reclining on a comfortable chair in the corner of the dressing room. Her friend and colleague Edith was on the armrest. Grace was sitting opposite on a swivel chair. She was telling the girls a story about an obsessive admirer who met her every morning at the entrance with a bouquet of flowers. "He's so serious," Grace said, amused. "His eyes are sad, but there's so much hope in them. Sometimes he doesn't say anything, and sometimes he starts to declare his love, and I'm so proud I pass him by." "Are you not afraid?" Edith asked, recognizing her. "Where do you live? Every day you are haunted by a crazy man." Her friend's assumption caused Grace to laugh. "He's like Raleigh or something. He's here on the dance floor right now, waiting for us to come out. And yet I'd be careful, he's a queer fellow." Edith shook her head vigilantly. "Come on," Grace grinned. "He's kind of funny." All the girls were dressed in short shorts and rhinestone tops. Their long hair was loose, and they wore eye-catching makeup on their faces. The girls worked as dancers in a local club, performing to warm up the audience on high platforms. Calypso's guests welcomed the three beauties, especially the male part of the club's visitors. How did Ciara end up here? It's simple. She came to the audition when she saw an advertisement at the bus stop requiring dancers for an evening show. The girl naively thought at first that it was a kind of concert hall. She knew how to dance, could dance, and loved it. Her childhood was spent in a large village with the beautiful name of Accord. There was a 2-story children's arts center on the central square, and it was in this center that Ciara had been choreographing for as long as she could remember. At first, her mother and grandmother took turns taking her to classes. Then Ciara grew up and got there on her own. Gradually, she joined the dance group. The girls performed at all holidays in Accord and even traveled to the city for competitions. Often they returned as winners, bringing back cups, medals, and certificates. Friendship, adventure, rehearsals, performances. It was a bright, saturated life. Ciara adored dancing and did not see herself as anything but a professional dancer, until she realized that her abilities, although certainly not bad, were far from perfect. At large regional and district competitions, Ciara saw girls of her age who could do things that she herself had never dreamed of. And her mother was against such a career. She set her daughter up for a serious profession. "Well, you probably don't have enough brains to become an engineer or a lawyer, do you?" My mother argued with offensive candor. "But there are other options. I was looking for a food technologist or a marketing specialist, for example." Her mother was right. Ciara's school grades left much to be desired, mostly weak C's. In physical education, of course, a solid A, the impact of many years of choreography, but the rest. Well, the girl had no heart for science. She liked to dance. In her dance group, she was one of the best, but still not good enough to compete with young dancers in regional competitions. What to say about a higher level? When the time came, her mother and stepfather decided everything for Ciara. They paid for her commercial education at the Faculty of Food Processing Technology. They rented an apartment near the university and sent her away from home with a light heart. Ciara knew that everyone was happy to see her go, because ever since her mother had married Matthew, Ciara had always felt like an extra. It was like she was getting in the way of their enjoyment of each other, distracting them with her learning problems and sometimes behavior at school. When Ciara was 9 years old, Abby, her baby sister, was born. It became clear that the reserved and cold Matthew could be a wonderful father, tender, caring, attentive. The mother, too, had melted into the little girl. Ciara watched them cooing over little Abby, and her heart ached because all she got were comments, heavy sighs, irritation. No, her mother and stepfather were kind of trying for Ciara. They were really doing a lot for her future, hiring tutors, buying nice clothes, and planning deliciously for their eldest daughter's future. But it's all kind of on duty, just because it has to be. Mother and Matthew's heart belonged to little Abby. Her smile immediately made them smile and delighted. The only talk in the house was about the new skills and amazing abilities of the little girl. Years passed, Abby grew up, nothing changed. She was just some kind of a perfect child, obeying her parents, loving to read, trying to help her mom and dad in everything. And when Abby went to school, it turned out that she was also smart. The girl brought home only A's, exclusively. Ciara loved her little sister, too. Abby really was a wonderful person, sensitive, kind, and fun. But to feel like an extra in your own home was really hard. And that's exactly how Ciara felt. Dancing was the girl's only salvation on stage. In the circle of her favorite friends, Ciara forgot all her sorrows. Music and clear movements invariably lifted her spirits. The applause of the appreciative audience drew her away. Except that one far from beautiful day, some businessman bought the children's center, and the club turned into a dairy. New jobs appeared in accord, well-paid ones, by the way. Some sections and clubs were transferred to local schools. But Ciara's dance group broke up. They needed bigger halls, mirrors, a stage. Ciara felt this moment hard. The only thing that filled her life with energy and joy was gone. No more rehearsals, no more walks with the girls after practice, no more road shows. It's all for the best, her mother exhorted. She had no way of understanding her eldest daughter, nor did she try to. You're probably already in your senior year of high school. You'll be entering soon. You can't spend all day and night doing frivolous things. It's time to start studying. Matthew, who was always on his mother's side, joined in. We'll pay for you to study at the Commercial Department of Food Processing. Your task is to study at least for C's, so as not to drop out. When you come back, you'll get a job at our dairy. That's it. Her parents had already made up their minds for Ciara, but she did not resist because she no longer had a dream to fight for. Her plans to become a great dancer were in the past. Ciara felt that she was hindering her stepfather and mother, that without her their family mom, dad, and little miracle daughter would become more harmonious and happy. So when the time came, the girl happily flew out of the nest. A new life, new acquaintances, bright impressions were waiting for her. Her stepfather transferred money to Ciara's card twice a month, which was enough only for groceries, but the girl could not complain. She realized that her parents were not millionaires to provide her with a comfortable life. They already had to pay for her studies and rent. But there were so many interesting things in the city: movies, cafes, stores with beautiful clothes, nightclubs. All these pleasures were not cheap. And Ciara, of course, couldn't afford much. She needed money. Studying didn't take much time and effort. My mother was right. The commercial department of a not very prestigious faculty didn't demand anything supernatural from its students. The main thing was not to miss lectures and attend all seminars. That's why Ciara gradually formed a clear idea in her head: she needed a job. She can study and work part-time in the evenings. Waitress, saleswoman, animator, caterer. There were plenty of jobs for students in the big city. The girl methodically wrote them out in a notebook. In the end, she had an impressive list, some of which would definitely fit. And that ad recruiting girls for a dance show it came across by accident. Fate, no less. Of course, Ciara couldn't ignore it. The girl immediately dialed the number indicated in the ad. She was listened to and invited to the casting. Ciara arrived at the appointed time at Club Calypso. It was 3 p.m. The deserted dance floor looked really huge. Ciara was even confused at first. A scowling security guard escorted her to the dressing room. There she was given a strange costume that looked more like a swimsuit than a dance outfit. A silver skirt that looked like a wide belt, a tiny top. The girl who issued the costume realized everything by the surprised face of the young dancer. "So you don't know where you've come either?" she asked. "I told you that you should make a proper announcement. You're already so fifth. You're gonna leave now. Too bad, you've got the right data, huh?" "What's the job?" Ciara decided to ask after all. It turned out that they needed girls for club dances, slim young ladies who could move beautifully. When the degree of fun drops on the dance floor, the girls are released on the high platform, and they add energy and mood to the evening. "Will I be wearing clothes?" Ciara asked. The girl laughed. Of course, this is a decent establishment. Yes, the dancers' costumes are revealing enough to attract attention, but it's only dancing. And we have good security here. They make sure there are no misunderstandings. Chiara thought about it and agreed to give it a try. After all, it was her long-forgotten dream to dance in front of an audience. Besides, the salary offered was more than good. You can't earn so much as a waitress. And the Club Calypso really is a serious place. As a last resort, if you don't like something, you can always leave. That's how Chiara became a dancer. 2 other girls joined her at Calypso. At first, the choreographer showed the newcomers Edith's basic moves. Grace and Chiara quickly understood what was required of them, and the choreographer was satisfied. "It's nothing complicated," smiled the man, who was a fairly famous dancer in the past. "I showed you the base, and then you improvise, move to the music, show yourself. You are beautiful, graceful. Just nymphs. The public will love you." At first, Chiara was shy to go under the spotlight. She realized that everyone was looking at her. But then, looking at her friends dancing selflessly. The girl was drawn in, relaxed. Now she felt on her platform, like a fish in water, watching. Well and great, they admire, and there is something to admire. Slender, trim figure, long legs, shiny dark hair, beautifully flowing over elegant shoulders, huge eyes, black eyebrows, plump, almost like Angelina Jolie lips. Chiara had once been shy of them as a child. Some of her classmates had even teased her with sticky fish. Now these girls themselves ran to cosmetology to inject fillers. As time passed, Chiara began to enjoy her work. She liked to delight. During the dance, she felt like a queen above the crowd, because the girls' platforms were high enough so that they could not be reached by obsessive admirers, and the young nymphs certainly had admirers. The girls' safety was strictly monitored by 2 strong, pumped-up guys. The place was a serious nightclub Calypso, not a cheap eatery, and not the 3rd disrupted bar, but incidents still happened. Some club guests managed to achieve their goal of making their way to the girl they liked, and that's what happened to Grace. A young guy who happened to be in the club one day saw her and apparently fell in love. Followed the girl home in the morning, got her address. So now he meets her every morning with flowers. Grace laughs, but if it were Chiara, she'd be wary. There's no telling what this guy has in mind. And how did he track Grace down? The club's employees were leaving the club in the morning through a different building entirely, the one next door. That's surprising. Maybe he bribed one of the guards. Still, Chiara felt a little sorry for the guy. He must have grace in his heart to be waiting for her at the door. And flowers aren't cheap these days. Maybe he's spending his last dime on a bouquet for EVA. Everything's funny to her. Chiara also had an admirer who knew more about her than he should. And he was nothing like the poor, humble guy who'd been keeping Grace in line. He was a grown man, mature and very wealthy. David owned a chain of high-end restaurants in their town. He was in his early 40s. Tall, athletic, fit, well-groomed, always stylishly and tastefully dressed, incredibly charismatic and charming. Her friends were even a little jealous of Chiara because of the fact that David paid attention to her. Usually the guards suppressed the girl's communication with the guests of the club. But this time the owner of the club approached Chiara and, a little stammering, proposed to meet. "One of our guests really likes you, a VIP guest. He wants to talk to you, just to talk to you. If you don't mind, I'll tell him, he'll understand. It's just that he's a powerful man." Chiara realized that this was something very serious. The club owner himself was almost making excuses for her now. She felt a little scared, and at the same time curious as to what kind of important figure was paying attention to her. Who was he, this person who made the master embarrassed in front of her and an ordinary dancer? Yes, and to Chiara's ego, this is a very big power. That's how irresistible she is, since she got such a man hooked. Anyway, Chiara then gave her consent to the meeting, which caused the joy of the boss. David came straight to her dressing room. So handsome, so strong. He was not distinguished by aggregates, muscles and pumped-up torso, but nevertheless made an impression of a very strong and confident man. The man looked over Chiara with interest, who had already managed to change out of her dance costume for blue ripped jeans and a stretchy t-shirt. David is mesmerizing. Really. Could this man be her admirer? Until now, the guards had been chasing away the boys who'd fallen in love with the pretty dancer, and now suddenly she had a man like this. David settled into the chair across from Chiara and smiled at her. The girl's confusion seemed to add to it. Why are you so risky? He finally broke the silence. You look so different on the stage. Ciara smiled embarrassedly, her eyes downcast in a childish way that she couldn't quite figure out how she felt. This man, he was both intimidating and alluring at the same time. David took the initiative. He had mastered the art of negotiation. Ciara didn't notice how relaxed she was. The man asked the girl about her life and hobbies, so that she wanted to tell him everything. He listened attentively and made appropriate remarks. Once in a while, Ciara ventured to ask him questions too. He answered straightforwardly, without prevarication. So Ciara learned that David owned a restaurant business and was therefore a very rich man. He also had a wife and children. The man did not even try to hide it, as well as the fact that he really liked Ciara. He offered her to be with him together, to travel, to spend time, to communicate. "You're very beautiful," David said, looking straight into her eyes. These words from his lips had an incredible effect on the girl. She felt goosebumps run down her back, her palms grew cold, and the blood clung to her cheeks. "I'd really like to get to know you better, but I can see you're not ready yet. Am I right?" Of course he was right. David seemed to know everything in the world. Ciara nodded cautiously. "Well, I won't rush you," David smiled. "But no one will stop me from coming and admiring you. You don't mind, do you?" Of course, Ciara didn't mind. She realized that she would be dancing just for him from now on, and would search for David with her eyes among the crowd. He frightened her with his power. A voice with a slight hoarseness, the scent of elite perfume, mixed with the smell of expensive cigarettes. It all made the girl's head spin. But something kept Ciara from taking a counter-step. She needed to think it over. David is married. He offers her to be his mistress. It's not an enviable role. After all, Ciara was raised in a traditional household, and all her neighbors were the same. Such liaisons were frowned upon in their village. And it was scary to be in the hands of such a powerful man. Now the final step has not yet been taken. David is keeping his distance, giving her a choice. Will Ciara have a choice later? That's the question. David was gone, and Ciara began a time of anguish and torment. At night, lying in her bed, she imagined David, trying to figure out where he was, what he was doing. Maybe he was generalizing another young beauty or working. Was he thinking about her? Or was her indecision the end of a relationship that had never really begun? The next day was Ciara's day off. She didn't go to the club, but on Saturday she was performing. Ciara danced on her platform and desperately hoped that David could see her now. She was trying for him, just for him, and David could see her. When Ciara returned to her dressing room, she found a bouquet of scarlet roses on her dressing table with a note from him. The man expressed his admiration for the young dancer and compared her to a lovely, graceful nymph. That would make anyone dizzy. David often came to the club. When Ciara noticed him in the VIP area, her heart began to beat faster. The man sent her gifts, a bouquet of flowers, a bottle of expensive wine, a dainty bracelet. Sometimes he showed up himself. Ciara always waited for these meetings. He sat in the dressing room in the chair opposite the girl. They talked. David looked at Ciara, interested. In his eyes read admiration and passion. David waited patiently for a sign from the girl, and this attracted Ciara even more, but she still did not dare. Her friends called her stupid for it. Such a man, I shook my head dreamily. Grace, not like my begrudging admirer with the bouquets. If I were you, I wouldn't doubt it for a moment, said Edith. I wish I had been so fortunate. Try harder. Maybe you'll make it, said Grace. No, I've got the same beggarly students as you. Edith was not indebted. Ciara had her doubts. Something kept her from becoming a lover. David has a wife after all, and he is pursuing her, a young dancer. This says a lot about both the man's moral character and his non-serious attitude towards her. However, all this became unimportant when David sat down in the chair opposite Ciara and looked at her with his deep, dark eyes, mesmerizing as a rabbit's boa constrictor. Ciara realized that she was just a pretty trophy to him. David would play with her quickly and find a new object. And she was just a difficult prey to heat up the hunting excitement. Yes, Ciara was aware of all that. And at the same time, she knew she couldn't resist for long. David had an almost magical effect on her. Ciara found it increasingly difficult to control herself. His look, his voice, his palms, his lips. The girl had no strength left to resist. "Good job keeping it together," the costumer, a woman in her 40s, said to Ciara. "The minute you go along with David, it's all gone. How many of them I've seen, first one, then another, then a third. But you're a good girl. You've got guts." With a pivot. If that woman knew what kind of dreams Ciara was having with David. But the costumer's words betrayed for a while that her detached demeanor was the best strategy for dealing with the situation. The parents didn't know what their daughter did for a living. Ciara didn't tell them she danced. They wouldn't have understood, would have thought their daughter was a disgrace to their pious family. If nothing else, they would have taken her back to the village out of harm's way. Once again, Ciara would have to feel like the fifth wheel on the cart. And of course her mother and stepfather knew nothing about David or Ciara's new lifestyle. They generally preferred to keep their distance. The three of them seemed to be doing well together. And time passed. Gradually, Ciara began to realize that she was losing herself. At first, the dancing, the club, the nightlife, the admirers all seemed like a bright adventure. But then the girl began to feel some strange desolation. Rattling music, cigarette smoke, booze being a river, sticky stairs, flashing lights, and David, who was getting more and more insistent and assertive. Ciara's partners changed one after another. First, Ida's parents found out who their daughter worked for, showed up at her house and made her scandalized and forced her to quit. Then Grace unexpectedly married that funny fan with flowers. He turned out to be reliable, faithful, and genuinely in love. Grace appreciated all this to the fullest. The girls were quickly replaced. The new girls danced just as well, but Ciara couldn't make friends with them. Maybe she just didn't want to. The girl drank a lot now, and somehow she became addicted to the energy cocktails served at the Calypso bar. They gave her strength, lifted her mood, and made her gloomy thoughts disappear. Everything seemed to be going well for Ciara. She was dancing and earning money, and not bad money at that, and she was studying at the university in parallel. She even had a wealthy admirer. Ciara knew that if she asked, David would do a lot for her. Nothing seemed to be impossible for this man. It was true that every request had its price, but it was no longer important. And yet Ciara's soul felt a kind of hopeless longing. She wanted to be like before, full of hopes for a new interesting life. Modest, a little shy. But after more than a year of dancing in front of hundreds of people, it is difficult to return to the past, to the present. One day Ciara decided to quit. She came with an application to the owner of Calypso, but he offered her twice the salary because Ciara was so well received by the audience. So the girl stayed. It was true what they say, everything in the world has its price, even her, Ciara. That evening the girl was coming home from university. Tomorrow was the exam. There was a counseling session today. Ciara hadn't prepared anything for it. She already had an envelope with the right amount of money on her shelf. Working at Calypso gives her the opportunity to not waste time on unnecessary studying. Her parents, looking at their daughter's credit card, were overjoyed. They thought Ciara had finally gotten smart. They did not suppose that 70% of these marks the girl just bought. It was hard to deceive them, but Ciara had no close relations with her mother. And then there's David. He asked Ciara to fly to the Dominican Republic for the vacations. A paradise, a luxury resort. A week alone with David, away from all the worries and heavy thoughts. It was the reboot Ciara needed. There was no strength to resist David, and she didn't want to. What did she have to lose? So everyone's fooled, so why not make the most of this situation and enjoy it? And what happens next? Who cares? The girl was distracted from her gloomy thoughts by a frightened cry. The weak, trembling voice was full of despair. Ciara turned to the sound and was stunned. Pressed against the wall of the house was an old woman, thin, small, with a plaid tropical bag in her hands. Her eyes were full of terror, for a huge dog was coming at her, growling menacingly. The dog must have smelled the meat the old woman was carrying home from the market. As luck would have it, no one was around. The big dog, smelling a weak victim, was preparing to attack. Ciara, without thinking, grabbed a stick lying at her feet. Shouted loudly, "The beast," and went right at him. The dog was confused. He felt the strength and determination of his opponent. Besides, he was very embarrassed by the stick. He decided not to mess with the humans and ran away. The old woman, pale as a sheet, looked at the dog. She couldn't believe her unexpected rescue. Chiara stepped closer to her. "Are you all right?" "It's okay, honey. It's okay. Thank you so much. I thought he was going to kill me. How did you not freak out?" Chiara shrugged her shoulders. In the village, she'd often seen people fending off dogs. It was usually enough to hold something in their hands and show their confidence. Dogs are afraid of that. Such a beautiful girl, thin, young, and not afraid. Continued to admire the old woman. And they also say that men are the stronger sex. Chiara smiled. She was pleased by this old woman's gratitude. She felt strong and good and kind next to her. A wonderful feeling. "I want to thank you," the stranger continued. "Don't do that," the girl protested. "It wasn't hard for me. It wasn't hard for me, and it's what anyone would have done in my place." "Not any of them," the old woman shook her head. "You have a heart of gold. Still, I want to thank you. I have something that seems to have been specially made for you, and I don't need it." This was where Chiara was already torn with curiosity. What was this thing? "Shall we go?" The old woman smiled, noticing the hesitation of her interlocutor. "I live not far from here, in the next house." Chiara didn't follow the old woman up to the apartment. It's not a big deal. There were so many stories about young girls disappearing. Still, she couldn't trust a stranger 100%. The old woman understood everything and was not offended. On the contrary, she praised her companion for her vigilance. The elderly woman was gone for about 5 minutes, and then she came out to Chiara with a small scroll in her hands. The thing this grandmother was talking about was carefully wrapped in wrapping paper. "Here you go," she smiled, holding out the gift to Chiara. "It's like it was made especially for you. It's amazing. It doesn't even look like that." The girl untied the rope in impatience, unfolded the paper, and could not restrain a surprised sigh. How could such a thing be possible? It was a painting, painted in colors, small, a little larger than a standard photograph, and yet all the details on it were written out with amazing precision and clarity. Chiara, gazing into this creation, became more and more amazed, because the painting was of herself, while working at the club apparently, one of her arms reaching upward, her back leaned back slightly, long hair spread across her shoulders. Only instead of the usual mini shorts, skirts, the artist drew on her an exquisite light dress on thin straps, as if shining from within. Like a princess from a fairy tale, the image was completed with a thin tiara. Chiara recognized herself. It was her face, her eyes, her eyebrows, her lips, her bracelet on her arm. Leather, wide, made up of an interweaving of thin bags. She bought it once in a gift shop. Inexpensive, but a favorite piece of jewelry. Darkness reigned around the heroine of the painting, lightly scattered by starlight. "It looks like you," the old woman smiled. "That's why I thought you should have it. It's one of my favorite paintings, but it suits you better, by God." "Where did you get this?" Chiara finally found her voice. "Brandon gave it to me. The artist rented my apartment for a long time. Now he's been gone a couple months, but he comes to visit me sometimes. I used to treat him like my own grandson. I don't have any of my own, and Brandon's used to working. His family is strict and cold, so he melted and got attached to me. He painted so many pictures for me, landscapes, still lifes, and even my portrait, and he often paints this princess. She's dancing, or just sitting on the shore, or smiling. It's beautifully drawn. It's very beautiful. He's a talent, and he's appreciated. He is. That's why he moved out, isn't it? He got some money, so he bought an apartment in the center with a picturesque view of the river. She's a princess, or a mermaid, or a nymph, or just an ordinary girl. How many times have I wondered who that is? I thought maybe it was his favorite girl. But he jokes away. I saw her in a dream, he says, that's all. You can't get a word out of him anymore." Amazing story. "That's right. And you look a lot like this girl. Practically a portrait of you. That's why I'm giving you this painting." Chiara smiled, thanked the old woman, and headed home. She spent the rest of the evening admiring the painting, becoming more and more convinced that she was the one depicted in it. And the facial features and figures, and even the movement in which the girl froze. Everything matched. Except for the costume, of course. Ciara had never worn such beautiful long dresses and tiaras, but everything else was identical. There was no doubt about it. This mysterious artist Brandon, that's what the old lady had called him. He must have seen her at the club. During the dance, probably the movements from her dance and the painter depicted in his painting. And it should happen that the work was in her hands quite by chance. It was mystical. Looking at the portrait, Ciara tried to imagine its creator. She knew it was a fairly young man. The old woman had said she treated him like a grandson. So Brandon is about Ciara's age or slightly older. He's also clearly a very talented guy. How accurately he captured Ciara's movements. And the details. The artist didn't even forget to label the tiny mole on her shoulder. Maybe he saw it more than once. Maybe he even went to the club on purpose to get a better look at the dancer who looked like her. But he was seriously hooked. According to the old lady, Brandon often made the girl the heroine of his paintings. Ciara hesitated for a moment. Wow. Apparently she has other devoted fans besides David. Except Brandon never showed himself in any way. He remained invisible to Ciara. Remembering David, Ciara wondered. Dominica, a reliable, strong man by her side. A wonderful week ahead. But then what? He'd go back to his wife and kids, and she'd remain in mistress status. They'll see each other occasionally. David, of course, won't begrudge her attention and gifts. Ciara will have some luxury, expensive things. Maybe he'll even buy her a car and an apartment. But that's not certain, of course. And then David would get bored quickly. Ciara knew that. The girl understood perfectly well that it was her aloofness and inaccessibility that caught the man's eye. What about her? Did she love David herself? Any feelings? Ciara felt it for the man for sure. He drew her in with his strength and confidence. Determined and successful, almost omnipotent. And he looks at her, an ordinary student, a dancer, a girl from the village, as if she were a deity. It's not a fact that this look is sincere. David is experienced, mature, intelligent. He knows how to act to get his way. And yet, realizing all of this, Ciara still reached for David. It was a strange, confusing situation. Ciara wanted love, warmth, care, all of which she didn't get at home. In David's strong, reliable embrace, the girl would feel needed and protected at least for a while, and even, perhaps, could convince herself that it was not an illusion. And then, it was that later that made the girl hesitate and doubt. David would leave her. He would return to his family, find a new object. Would Ciara be able to cope with his departure? Would she be able to take it? Suddenly, this painting is like a message from a secret admirer. Ciara really seems to have aroused strong feelings in him. He portrayed her as more than just a beautiful demigoddess. Only someone truly in love could look at her like that. It's a shame that Brandon's in the shadows. He may have tried to get through to her, but the guards wouldn't let him. Not everyone is as powerful as David. Ciara was suddenly very eager to get to know him, this artist for whom she had become a muse. To see what he looked like, to hear the young man's voice, to talk to him, and look into his eyes, only how to find Brandon in this huge city. The old lady said the artist had managed to buy himself an apartment in the center overlooking the river. Ciara knew nothing more about him, only his name and approximate place of residence. That's a bit small, isn't it? I wish I knew Brandon's last name. Then it would be possible to scour social networks or artist forums. But as it is, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Of course, we could go back to the old lady, ask her more about the young man. Maybe she knows his address, but it's awkward. And anyway, they'll see each other. And then what? She imagined that the guy was in love, and he might not be free at all. Ciara's thoughts were interrupted by a call from David. They had agreed to call tonight. The man should explain how to issue a passport. The trip to the paradise corner of the earth was just around the corner. David became more insistent. He came to Ciara's dressing room more and more often, sat closer to her, and even allowed himself to put his arm around her waist, which had never happened before. More and more often, Ciara felt like David's thing. In a way, it was even pleasant. Next to him, she didn't have to decide anything, only obey his orders. On the other hand, it was overwhelming, but Ciara couldn't push him away, couldn't refuse him. They were going on a trip, and there was already a special relationship between them. It would be a little while before they became serious. Ciara's heart was heavy. She felt like she was making a mistake by getting closer to David. This relationship would change her, and it would change her irrevocably. Booze was a good way to drown out the painful thoughts. There was more and more of it in Ciara's life. A glass of wine before bed, weekends at the bar with a beer. This trend was starting to stress Ciara out. On the other hand, everyone around her was acting the same way. And it was okay, sort of. It was an ordinary summer evening. Ciara was sitting at home, watching TV, eating ice cream, relaxing. Today was her day off. She didn't need to go to Calypso. Some acquaintances had invited her to a bar, but Ciara had declined. She wanted to be alone in peace and quiet. The loud music and the hum of people's voices was enough for her at work. Suddenly, it was as if some unknown force lifted her off the couch and forced her to pull on shorts and a t-shirt. She was going downtown. Yes, a great idea to walk alone along the waterfront. She'd look at the houses, one of which appeared to be where the very same Brandon lived. The painting now had a place of honor in the apartment, standing on Ciara's nightstand. Every time she woke up, she saw herself in the image of a beautiful princess and smiled. She felt warm and light at heart. Someone sees her with such eyes, it means that she is not indifferent to this someone. Despite a weekday evening, the center was crowded. Parents with small children, couples in love, and teenagers on scooters strolled along the embankment. There was always a festive atmosphere here. Ciara walked along the embankment. On her right there was a parapet, behind which flowed a full-flowing river. On the other bank there was a huge park, overgrown with tall trees. Pleasure boats with vacationers sailed along the river. On the left side of the street stood out 5-story houses. They were quite new, recently built, but not typical high-rise buildings in the form of stone boxes, but buildings with fanciful balconies, galleries, and passages. Ciara knew it was high-end housing. The passerby was really starting to make good money from his paintings if he could afford to buy an apartment in a place like this. Ciara decided to walk next to the houses. Clean yards, spacious parking lots, a sports field. Behind the new buildings one could see old houses by which one could study the history of the city. Stucco patterned shutters, columns. Ciara involuntarily admired the old buildings. Now some organizations were located here, and once upon a time, merchants and artisans lived in these houses. Ciara's attention was suddenly drawn to the archway leading to the courtyard. I wonder what the girl was prepared to see there. Some old monument or fountain. But it was the walls of the archway itself that caught Ciara's attention. They were painted from bottom to top, and not just primitive drawings or graffiti, but images that clearly came out from under the feet of real artists. Beasts, fairy tale characters, heroes of famous movies and cartoons, wise sayings written in beautiful fonts. Ciara looked at this chronicle in admiration. What an extraordinary place. Her eyes blurred with the abundance of drawings. She wanted to look at everything, absolutely everything, without missing a single detail. And then Ciara saw herself again. On the round, yellow surface of the moon, a girl with long dark hair, beautiful and sad, danced barefoot against the black of space. And again the same leather bracelet on her wrist, her favorite. She was still wearing it now. The girl's breath caught. This drawing was made by him, Brandon. The guy lives somewhere nearby and probably drew it just recently. The paint is still bright, fresh. The girl couldn't resist. She took an eyebrow pencil out of her bag and left a signature next to the picture. I've seen it. It's very beautiful. Only I'm not like that. Ciara returned home in a strange mood. On the one hand, she was happy to discover another piece of news from the mysterious Brandon and to see that she did indeed hold some place in his heart and thoughts. On the other, it was even harder now. Because after what had happened, she didn't want to see David at all. A relationship with him now seemed even more wrong. Ciara tried to imagine what Brandon looked like before she went to sleep. She might even have seen him at the club. She meant something to him, since Brandon drew her so often. The mother either died when he was very young, or her life was taken by an illness that developed after giving birth to an only child. The boy was raised by his father, a sullen and busy man, and also his grandmother, his father's mother. The child knew no denial of anything since childhood. His only parent, Jaden Wright, was a successful entrepreneur. The man always dreamed that his son, when he grows up, will continue his business. Jaden Wright planned to leave his mini empire to his heir. But something went wrong. Brandon didn't live up to his father's expectations. From an early age, he was indifferent to his business. Talking about purchases, profits, stocks, subsidiaries made him sad. Jaden Wright was angry. enrolled his son in financial literacy courses and economic schools. But Brandon was always there, in the ranks of the laggards, and the boy did not try to delve into all these wisdoms. His favorite pastime was drawing. From an early age, he drew on everything he could get his hands on: paper, books, refrigerator doors, and of course wallpaper. At the same time, from under the hands of the kid came out not the usual for such age scribbles, and quite good drawings. Then the boy had albums, as well as paints, pencils, and felt tip pens. His drawings improved day by day. Everyone who saw them admired them and advised Jaden Wright to send his son to art school. But he just dismissed it. He considered drawing a dabble, something not serious. The man planned to develop his son in another direction. As a teenager, Brandon could stay in his room 24 hours a day. In his sketchbook appeared fantasy worlds, evil trolls, beautiful princesses, courageous heroes. Drawing, the boy forgot about everything and about lessons, and about the need to go to school, and even about food. Drawing absorbed him completely. He didn't need anything. Nothing else interested him at such moments. And if it hadn't been for his grandmother, who had almost forcibly torn his grandson out of his familiar world, Brandon wouldn't have left his room at all. But Emily was relentless. She made sure that her grandson did his homework, ate on time, and attended all the classes and clubs that Jaden Wright had chosen for him. Emily and her son were practical, savvy, goal-oriented people. Brandon's creative nature was alien to them, and it is unclear what caused conflicts and frustrations. Brandon's mother would have shared his hobbies. She herself was very good at drawing. Jaden Wright still kept his wife's drawings, which she sometimes gave him. It was a transfer to paper of song lyrics that both spouses liked. Brandon loved looking at these drawings. To him, they were like a connection to the mom he never knew. It made him feel good to know that he looked like her. Years passed. Jaden Wright had almost given up on his failed son. Brandon was not the kind of heir one might dream of. Weak, unsportsmanlike, withdrawn. Doesn't understand his father's business and doesn't even want to know about it. He is always in the clouds, socializing with losers like himself. He doesn't think about the future, but Brandon was not much different from the sons of Jaden Wright's acquaintances. Children of rich fathers really rarely think about the future. They already know that everything will be fine. And Brandon, against the wishes of his grandmother and father, continued to develop his talent. At the age of 13, he enrolled in art school, constantly participated in some competitions and even won prizes. Jaden Wright did not particularly delve into this hobby of his son. It was not interesting to him and seemed useless. Then Brandon began to earn money. He was already painting quite professionally, and there were people willing to pay for his paintings, albeit small, but quite real money, and then more. Brandon mastered computerized drawing. He got orders. Digital illustrations were in demand in publishing houses. They were used for website design, advertising, and so on. Jaden Wright wondered how it was that his son had really learned to earn money by drawing. Really, what kind of income is there? Just pennies for pocket change. But it was his own. After high school, Brandon enrolled at the Art Institute. Although Jaden Wright had already made arrangements with the right people, and his son was expected at the prestigious Faculty of Economics. But the boy was adamant he was not interested in economics. He was not going to become the head of his father's business. I have a different way, Brandon tried to convey to his parents. What's the path there? And Jaden Wright didn't understand it. You can't make a lot of money with pictures. You're the one with the wind in your head now, and then you'll realize you were wrong. But it'll be too late. In the end, I did it my way. He was a tough character, despite his fragile exterior. And then Brandon left home altogether. Said he needed quiet and solitude. It made it easier for him to create. His father tried to offer his stubborn son money, at least for the first time. His heart was troubled for Brandon. Jaden Wright thought his son was not adapted to life, but he refused, saying that he had been earning money for a long time. The landlady accepted the young guest as her own. She was lonely. Her husband had died long ago, and God had not given them any children, so she took Brandon as her favorite grandson. Pancakes in the morning, borscht, knitted socks. The old woman enveloped the boy with comfort and attention, like a warm blanket, and it was pleasant to take care of this talented young man. Brandon did the same for Harper Clark. He carried her heavy bags from the store, helped her move furniture, repaired the faucet. He had never felt so completely accepted by his family. Brandon had high expectations that the boy couldn't and wouldn't meet. Here he was loved and accepted for who he was. Harper Clark sincerely admired the boy's work. She spent hours looking at his paintings, sometimes even gasped, not believing that such works could come out of the hands of such a young man. Brandon painted several landscapes for Harper Clark and even drew her portrait. The old woman hung it in the most prominent place on the living room wall. Brandon created custom paintings and worked for his soul. He also developed in digital painting. This activity brought a good income. At the same time, Brandon had time to study at the Art Institute, where the basic fundamentals of painting were given, thanks to which the guy honed and perfected his talent. The capable artist soon had like-minded people, the same enthusiastic painters of all ages, and with a wide range of experience. Brandon communicated with talented people of his city, organized exhibitions together with them, took part in creative evenings, went on plein airs. He had friends artists from other countries. Communication with them took place via social networks and messengers. Brandon's work, much to his own surprise, became increasingly popular. He received orders from all over the world. Now the guy had to refuse many. His work capacity was amazing. He could not sleep or eat for 24 hours, carried away by another picture. Harper often had to drag the inspirational young man into the kitchen to keep him from starving to death. But there was more to Brandon's life than work and study. With new friends, he often walked around the city, went to nature, went to the movies. In general, did everything that other people his age do. These meetings, they were a kind of reboot, a source of inspiration. Adventures, new acquaintances, beautiful landscapes. All this gave birth to amazing subjects in Brandon's head, which the young man then transferred to the canvas. Brandon had fans who were not just fans of his work, but a fan of himself. Mia, a young waitress from the bar, a student who worked part-time in the evenings. Skinny, with short brown curls and a scattering of cute freckles on her nose. Brandon and his friends frequented this bar. If it was Mia's shift, she would rush to their table, leaving all the other customers behind, the girl looking only at Brandon. She was mesmerized by the young man's intelligent, dark eyes, in which some mysterious fire was constantly burning. She liked everything about him: appearance, movements, manner of dress, and most importantly his hands, narrow palms, long aristocratic fingers. Probably approximately so looked young Dorian Gray from the famous work of Oscar Wilde. The girl showed her affection for Brandon with all her appearance. It was impossible not to notice it. Mia smiled at him, looked into his eyes, and inadvertently tried to touch his hand. And anyone else would have lost their head by now. But Brandon, to Mia's great regret, he paid no attention to her. Once upon a time, back in high school, the guy had a crush on a classmate. They even had an affair right after graduation. Stormy, bright, beautiful. Only it ended in a trivial way. One day, Brandon happened to see Leslie on the street. She was making out with a brutal, pumped-up guy. The girl did not think to be embarrassed. Noticing Brandon, as if nothing had happened, she introduced him to her companion and said that she was going to him because she had fallen in love and lost her head. Friends warned Brandon right away that Leslie was twirling her tail. Too superficial, impulsive, and infantile. The girl lived bright emotions. During the months of communication with Brandon, and feelings dulled. So Leslie went for a new dose of adrenaline. Since then, Brandon went into creative work and seemed to have stopped thinking about his personal life altogether. All his time was spent painting, for the time being. Until that amazing meeting in the most seemingly inappropriate place for such an event. So Brandon fully immersed himself in his work. The effect was corresponding to the guy got orders, money for his drawings of paintings and increased demand. The young artist could even afford to buy an apartment on the waterfront, which surprised his father, who thought his son was not capable of such a thing. This neighborhood has always attracted Brandon. Cozy, unusual, beautiful. And what were the views from the window of the full-flowing river? It's a great source of inspiration for artists. Sometimes Brandon visited Harper Clark. He was drawn to the warm, cozy atmosphere of her small apartment. The old lady always welcomed him with a happy smile and treated him to delicious home-cooked meals. His relatives and close people didn't understand him and constantly wanted to mold him into something else. It wasn't easy to feel his father's disappointment. The fateful meeting that so changed Brandon and his outlook on life took place on a Saturday night in February. One of the guy's buddies was having a birthday party. The birthday boy decided to celebrate at a nightclub. Not the best choice, in Brandon's opinion. The guy preferred other places of rest rock bar in the city center, where local musicians gathered, cafeteria on the waterfront, a large apartment studio of one artist from their company. But the birthday boy wanted something new. Of course, Brandon had been to nightclubs before. Loud music, bright flashes of Edith and ending in strange dancing. People in different, blank faces, in different eyes, sometimes laughter, smiles, and always drinking rivers of beer, champagne, cocktails. Brandon himself didn't drink such beverages. They dulled his consciousness and gave him a headache. The guy preferred to stay sane at all times. Yes, and he saw what happens to creative people, exhaustive, inspiration in a bottle of sad history. Brandon was sitting at a table that night, indifferent to what was going on. His buddies had gone to the dance floor. Brandon was not in the mood. He was thinking about the plot of the next painting: dark sky, moon, stars, a riverbank, and crossed highlights on the surface of the water. And in the center of this landscape there had to be something beautiful. Something or someone. Something or someone. Something equally mesmerizing, harmonizing with the concept. Brandon couldn't decide what it could be. Graceful animals? A beautiful tree? The human image he was looking for just wouldn't come up. And then a romantic composition began to play. Brandon wasn't particularly fond of club music, but this one caught his ear. There was a tenderness in the melody, romantic. And all this was well combined with the bass, which added accents in the right places. Brandon noticed that the heads of those present were turned upward. He followed the people's gazes and marveled. He saw the most beautiful girl in the world. No, the guy had certainly met beauties before. He posed models, after all, a graceful figure and a cute face, and the purpose was not to surprise. But there was something particularly appealing about the girl dancing on the platform. Graceful movements, huge eyes. Even in the semi-darkness, Brandon noticed how beautifully they shone like two diamonds. The girl was dressed in short shorts, high boots, and a shiny top. At the same time, she did not look provocative. All her movements were strictly calibrated. She resembled a princess or a beautiful nymph dancing in the moonlight. Brandon realized who he would place in the center of the moonscape. It would be Ciara, the young dancer. Everyone was admiring her. He tried to memorize every detail: the curve of her dark eyebrows, the proportions of her beautiful face, the shade of her long hair flowing down her graceful back and delicate shoulders. That evening, as soon as he got home, the boy went straight to work. By morning, the sketch was ready. Brandon admired his creation. Yes, indeed, everything turned out exactly as he wanted it to. A beautiful lunar landscape of John, a nymph, a princess, graceful, delicate creatures. Brandon hadn't recognized himself since. All he could think about was the beautiful stranger from the club. The boy then went to Calypso, and more than once admired the performance of the beautiful stranger, the heroine of one of his best paintings. The canvas now adorned the wall of his room, but the lad made many copies of various sizes. Several of them had already been sold for more than a good price. Brandon was drawn to this girl more and more, but she remained out of reach. He had heard her name accidentally, when a friend had called her once. Ciara was a wonderful name. It suited the young, beautiful creature as well as possible. Brandon realized he was in love. Probably for the first time in his life, his feelings for Leslie were nothing compared to what he felt now. Brandon wanted to hear the voice, to look into her eyes. He didn't know anything about this girl, but he had a good sense of people, and even from a great distance he realized that he and Ciara were made for each other. Only how to get close to her. She's always up there high up on the platform. Brandon realized he wouldn't dare approach her first. He'd never been a tough macho, but he didn't usually have trouble talking to people. But here he realized that if he'd been near Ciara, he wouldn't have been able to say a word out of excitement. She remained out of his reach. Beautiful, graceful, ethereal, distant and yet very close, almost kin. Brandon loved to visit Harper Clark. He liked the quiet, peaceful atmosphere of her small apartment. Every time the old woman was genuinely happy to see the former guest and tried to treat him to something homemade and tasty. Pies, pancakes, and borscht. Brandon would eat it all in both cheeks under Harper Clark's satisfied gaze. The guy gave her his paintings, and even once he drew a portrait of Harper Clark based on a photograph from his youth. She admired Brandon's work every time she saw it. "I can't believe a man can do that," she said, looking at his creations. That summer evening, Brandon came to Harper Clark's house again, bought her favorite candies at the supermarket, and went to visit. Sitting in the bright kitchen, Harper Clark in front of a plate of freshly fried, specially flavored pancakes for him. Brandon listened to the old lady's stories about her life. She had an argument with her neighbor, went to the clinic, the usual things, and suddenly, "Oh, I had an incident the other day." "I'm still reeling from it," Harper Clark admitted. "What is it?" Brandon looked up. "I'm walking home from the store tonight, and then, out of nowhere, a black dog jumps out at me. It's huge, angry, growling, coming towards me. I looked around and there's no one there, just like that." "Well, that's it. I think I'm finished." "The dog is rabid. Probably normal dogs don't attack people." The dog pushed the old woman back against the wall of the house. Harper Clark was retreating. When she felt the cold concrete against her back, she realized that there was nowhere else to go. She could only wait for the inevitable. Harper Clark's heart beat in her chest like a trapped bird. And there's a young girl, beautiful and very brave. She put her stick in her hands and attacked the dog. The dog smelled her strength, tucked his tail and ran away. My savior. The guardian angel must have sent her. There was no one else. Brandon smiled. The world was not without good people. He'd realized that a long time ago. "So I wanted to thank her," Harper Clark continued. "She didn't like it at first, but I told her I had something that looked like it was made for her." "And what is it?" Brandon wondered. "The painting is yours. I hope you're not offended. I gave her that princess who dances under the moon." Brandon nodded. He understood what it was about. A copy of his most successful painting, the one of Ciara. "Of course I don't mind," the boy assured me. "I gave it to you. You can do what you want with it. It feels good." Honestly. Just that girl, she looked just like the princess in the painting, eyebrows and eyes and hair, just as thin and beautiful. "Similar?" Brandon was wary. "Yeah, I thought there was no such thing. It's an amazing coincidence. When I got over the shock, I saw the resemblance right away, and I thought, wow, that's amazing." And her. And when she saw the painting, she was very surprised, and she looked at it for a long time, unable to believe it. And then she started asking me where I got the picture from, what kind of person painted it, and so on. "What about you?" And I answered all the questions I told you about you. Only it so happened that the pseudonym in his creative speech did not go. I guess we were both confused. Me because of that damn dog, because of the painting. Her portrait is as mesmerizing as hers. Brandon couldn't sleep for a long time that night, going over Harper Clark's story in his head. Really? Has she met Ciara? It was just a chance encounter on the street. And the painting that Brandon had been inspired by Ciara had fallen into her hands in such a strange way. Or was it just a girl who looked just like her? No, Brandon realized, sensed with some sixth sense, Ciara had the picture. She now knew she had a secret admirer. And of course the girl guessed that the artist had captured her in a dance, which meant he had seen Ciara at the club. Surely now the girl is thinking about him, wondering who he is, trying to imagine his appearance. Brandon assumed that since fate had made such an interesting move, now that something would shift in his relationship with Ciara. But nothing had changed. He was still watching her from afar, from the dance floor. I mean, she would dance on the high platform and then disappear, always disappearing. Brandon had tried to watch for her outside the club many times, but he'd never seen her leave. Perhaps there was some other way out of the establishment, some secret door. Or maybe the employees left through the office building adjacent to the club. Brandon was disturbed by the growing sadness in Ciara's eyes. He could see it even from a distance. Something was going on in the girl's life. Either she was facing a difficult choice or something bad had happened to her. Either way, she needed the support of a trustworthy man. Brandon was ready to help her. In fact, he wanted to, if only he had the opportunity to do so. It was a warm summer evening. The sun was beginning to sink, coloring the sky in matchless pastel tones of pink, purple, and blue. Brandon was working, painting another picture for a customer. The man decided to make a gift to his elderly mother to present then, and a landscape depicting the place where her childhood passed. Guy loved the order. Brandon worked with inspiration and pleasure. From time to time, he would glance out the window. The view of the waterfront always lifted his spirits. The vastness, the wide river, the smart people. A beautiful place. Today, it was crowded. The motley crowd flowed down the street like a full-blown stream. Suddenly, Brandon saw her. He could not be mistaken. He could not look at Kiara. Because he had drawn her so many times, he had followed her movements so closely. Among the crowd of people, he noticed the girl who had become his muse, his inspiration and his dream. She looked very different from her performances. Her hair was in a high ponytail. On her feet, stompy sneakers. A light backpack on her shoulders. Kiara was wearing jeans and a simple gray t-shirt. But Brandon recognized her. Of course he did. What was the likelihood that Kiara would be passing by his windows just as he took his eyes off the canvas? Minimal. There was no way to pass up a chance like that. Brandon rushed to the window. Now he would swing it open and respond to Kiara. What happens then? It doesn't matter. The main thing was to attract attention, to hold the girl, to ask her to wait for him. She'll probably be surprised. Maybe even scared. But Brandon will explain everything to her. And Kiara will understand. As an artist, Brandon was a very sensitive person and understood perfectly well that he and Kiara were made for each other, as if they were halves of one whole. The damn window wouldn't open. The handle was jammed. Had this happened before? Or was I pulling it in a futile attempt to deal with the broken mechanism? It was no use. Meanwhile, Kiara was getting farther and farther away. Judging by her trajectory, she was heading for the patio. That's where the windows from the other room looked out. Brandon rushed into the bedroom, opened the window, and leaned out through the waist-high window, looking for the girl. She was about to appear. But Kiara didn't enter the courtyard. He saw her disappear into the arches of the artist's arch. It was a special place. The walls of the arch from the ground to the ceiling were painted by artists. Local and visiting painters left their mark here, painting what they liked most of all: animals, people, heroes of movies and cartoons, memorable places of the city, anything. The arch was mesmerizing, attracting, holding. Kiara would surely spend a lot of time there, as would everyone who found themselves under its arches. Brandon would make it in time, make it to her in time for sure. What luck. The young man's heart was pounding. Would he look into the eyes of the one he had dreamed of for so long? The Arcade Pirelli's creations, among others. He drew her beautiful Kiara there too. How could he not? Since the young man first saw the beauty, she often became the heroine of his paintings. On the wall of the arch, Brandon painted the surface of the moon and Kiara dancing on it. Maybe the girl will even find her portrait. And if she doesn't, Brandon will show it to her. They were about to meet. Luck seemed to favor the young man as he sprinted out onto the landing. The elevator had just arrived on his floor. A neighbor stepped out and raised his eyebrows in surprise at the sight of the troubled young man. Brandon's hands were smeared with paint, as was his long apron, which he had forgotten to take off in his haste. Yes, he must have been a sight to behold. But Brandon didn't care about that right now. He was in a hurry to get to Kiara. The guy slid into the elevator car and pressed the first floor button with force. The doors closed. The elevator rushed down. Suddenly, it stopped abruptly. The car stopped between floors, frozen. In desperation, Brandon began to press all the buttons, but in vain. A moment later, the lights went out. The elevator was stuck. It had happened before in their entryway. But why now? Why was it happening now? Brandon called the dispatchers. Fortunately, his cell phone was in his apron pocket. Help showed up relatively quickly in about 20 minutes. That time seemed like an eternity to Brandon. He wanted to smash through the walls of the elevator and rush to Kiara. She was right there, only 100 meters away. Her helplessness raced into despair, but hope was also present. This could very well happen. Kiara lingered in the archway, waiting for him. When Brandon was finally released, he immediately rushed into the street. His path lay toward the archway. Someone was there. Someone was sure to be the lad heard voices. Indeed, in the archway, the guy caught a glimpse of people looking around in surprise, 2 guys and a girl. Kiara was not among them. Disappointment, sadness, pain. Brandon was hit with a whole gamut of feelings. How could this be? He walked over to the wall where he had once painted Kiara dancing on the moon, and saw the inscription that she had no doubt left behind. Ciara had written that she had seen his paintings and that she thought they were very beautiful, but the girl had also informed the guy that she wasn't like that at all. Not the way he imagines her to be. Brendan felt himself thrown into a fever. Ciara had left him a message. She knew Brendan would read it. She might come here again, or she might not. Either way, any opportunity to communicate with her should be taken. Guy pulled a black graffiti pencil out of his apron pocket and made an inscription below the one Ciara had left. He didn't even think about the content of the message. The right words were born in his head by themselves. You're the most beautiful girl in the world. The embankment under the old bridge. Ciara will find this place, she will. And that's where Brandon will leave another message for her. Without putting the matter off, the boy returned home, took paints, brushes, changed his clothes, and went to the embankment under the old bridge. It was a quiet, deserted place. It was here, on the concrete wall, that Brandon would write a message for Ciara. Or rather, he'd draw it. It's what he does best. All the more so because some unknown force was already pulling him by the hand to the wall, forcing him to create, to work, to draw. Brandon took on the task with passion. He drew the central town square, the fountain, the pyramidal poplars, the clock tower with a clock on the face. He marked the correct time. Then Brandon drew a bench, exactly like the one that stood near the fountain in that very park. And on it, on this very bench, the artist drew a girl. She sat half-turned toward the audience, head slightly down, cell phone in hand. It was Ciara, dressed exactly as she was today. Jeans, sneakers, gray t-shirt. If she saw it, of course she would understand everything, but to outsiders the work would remain just a beautiful and realistic picture. Ciara will understand. If she wants to, she'll come to the park at 6 o'clock at night. And he, Brandon, would wait for her there every day from now on. Back home, Ciara took a bath, warmed up dinner, and turned on her favorite TV series. The events unfolding on the screen did not occupy the girl much. She was thinking about what she saw today, that mysterious artist Brandon. He drew her again and again in the image of a beautiful girl, not just a girl, almost a sky dweller. That must be how he sees her. It's a big mistake. The guy is clearly in love with her, and, like every lover, idealizes the girl. The artist sees her through some very different eyes. How fortunate that they are strangers in reality. Otherwise, this man would be disappointed. Apparently, he is very young and inexperienced, since he doesn't understand who she is. And she seems to be David's soon-to-be mistress. And Ciara realizes that it won't be for long. It'll be a while before David finds someone else younger, more interesting, but she's still okay with this relationship. Why? But probably she wants to feel dear to someone for a while. And David, he knows how to court. Next to him, you feel unique, special, and the only one. So what if it's all just an illusion? It doesn't matter. The upcoming trip is the step that separates Ciara from giving up on David. And she's ready to take it, was ready. The girl had already decided everything for herself, but then suddenly there was this picture in the archway. A mysterious unknown artist was trying to tell her that she was beautiful and worthy of true love. And it was at this turning point that this image caught her eye. When she saw herself in this image, she doubted again, doubted that she was doing the right thing. David's married. He'd already had an army of them like Ciara. And how many more were to come? Maybe I should just say no to David. But the tickets are already bought, the hotel's booked. Perhaps it was too late, she should have thought of it sooner. Ciara decided that tomorrow night after the exam she would go to the archway again and look at her portrait. And there, on that wonderful spot, she would make her final decision. The following evening, Ciara stood in the archway again. This is a completely unique place after all. Even the atmosphere is special. And here's her portrait. But what is it? There was a new inscription underneath it. It must have been left by the artist. Or not. Maybe someone was just kidding. That's also possible. There's a lot of people here every day. Brandon, if it was really him, asked Ciara to go down under the old bridge. This was already resembling a quest, and Ciara just couldn't help but go there. The girl, trying not to change from a quick step to a run, went to the old bridge. It was at the other end of the embankment. It was a long walk, and Ciara couldn't wait to get there. Suddenly, under the bridge, there was a solution to all her problems, a way out of the difficult situation she was in, even salvation. The passers-by looked at the pretty girl in a hurry. Ciara realized she looked a little strange. Upset, anxious, her cheeks were burning, her face was hot, but her palms and feet, on the contrary, were very cold, and she was afraid that she wouldn't find anything under the bridge. Chiara had put too much hope in this place, on the painting. Barely under the bridge, Chiara saw it immediately and exhaled with relief. That inscription, it wasn't a joke, it wasn't a hoax. She had indeed been left by the artist, and he had also painted a new picture for her. This time it was big, the whole wall. The paint was still freshly painted, and he must have finished it recently. Chiara already recognized the young man's handwork in his own special way. Realistic images emerged from his brush, as if a glow was emanating from them. Amazing talent. This time Brandon painted the central square. Chiara recognized the fountain, the clock tower, the trees. How does this guy manage to achieve such realism? Chiara could even see Edith's glare on the beady black eyes of the sparrows scampering by the fountain. And sure enough, Chiara saw herself. She was wearing the same jeans and t-shirt as yesterday, so that meant Brandon had seen her. But why hadn't he come over? Didn't dare. Poor guy thinks she's some kind of goddess, but she's just an ordinary girl who's willing to be a rich man's mistress for the sake of a good life. Yeah, it's going to be hard for her to accept David's game after all this. I wonder what Brandon wanted to say with this painting. This time the guy didn't sign anything. But Chiara realized that the plot was chosen for a reason. It contained some secret meaning. And then her gaze fell on the dial adorning the tower. 6 p.m. Could it be that Brandon was asking her to be at the park at 6 p.m.? But what day? Chiara searched the painting with her eyes for any clue and found none. Saw only the time and nothing else. The girl glanced at her watch. Just in time to get to the square by the right hour. If she took her time. Or should she just give up and go home? It's time to pack. The flight's the day after tomorrow. Chiara had never been abroad before. She's never even seen our sea. She's going on a wonderful vacation at an expensive resort. David won't deny her anything. She'll feel like a real princess, even if only for a while. But how to give up this fairy tale that appeared in her life recently and changed her so much? Chiara realized she probably wouldn't find Brandon in the park. But there was still a chance, albeit a small one. And this guy, this young artist that Chiara had never seen in her life, she cared about him. The girl wanted to know what he looked like, to hear his voice, to feel all the love he expressed for her through these paintings. Chiara arrived at the square even before the appointed time. She couldn't walk slowly, her feet carried her forward. Here was the bench from the painting. Chiara sat down on it. There it is, the clock tower, people all around. But none of them fit the role of an artist in love. Women with 2 babies. Men with a newspaper. 2 old men playing chess on a bench opposite a flock of boys splashing self-consciously in the fountain. Red-haired girl with a book. Chiara sighed heavily. Obviously no miracle was going to happen. That was fine. She'll sit here a little longer and then go home. She had a lot of things to do. Things to pack. Call David. And then she saw him. It was definitely him, a tall, slender young man, walking straight to her bench from the fountain and smiling. He was looking right at her, keeping his eyes on the girl. The guy seemed a little embarrassed, but tried to hide it. "We finally met," he said as he hugged Chiara. Nice voice, quiet and a little lulling. The girl was unable to tear her gaze away from his eyes framed by long lashes. The guy was clearly over-embarrassed and it looked really cute. "My name is Brandon. I know that's all I know about you, and that you have an apartment on the waterfront," the old lady said. Looking into his eyes, Chiara realized that she wasn't going anywhere with David. She was staying here, with Brandon.